Hi, my name is Debbie Dotson. I was born in Pontiac, Michigan in 1957, so yes, that makes me a little bit on the old side. My name, actually, the Dotson name, is my husband's. I've had many names. My first name, given name, was Debbie Bond, and that was my grandparents' name. My mom was a 17-year-old unwed teenage mother. I had quite a different life when I was young. My mom was a waitress. We lived with my grandparents, and when I was about 9 years old, she met my stepfather and got married, and then had my half-brother, and he's about 10 years younger than me. We've been very close for most of our life because he was the only sibling at that time that I knew. I did not know my father. My father was not a part of my life. My grandparents were very upset that my mom was pregnant, although they did take extremely good care of us. They worked very hard. Both of them were blue-collar workers. No one in my family got an education beyond high school. In fact, most of them dropped out of high school. So when I was young and growing up, I was very well cared for. My mom was kind of a wild child, though. She did a lot of things that probably she shouldn't have with a child, but I can't fault her for that because she was so young, and everybody makes mistakes when they're young. So again, she got married to my stepfather. She was still a waitress, and at that point, we lived in a small apartment. My stepfather was a taxi cab driver, so we didn't have a lot. In fact, by today's standards, we were very low income. We never got public assistance to my knowledge, although I'm sure that we probably could have. Why I'm telling this part of the story is it really talks about who I am and how I got to where I am now, 67 years later. My brother, he had we call it the accident, but it wasn't an accident. He was out playing by where we lived in an apartment with his friends, and back then Planet of the Apes was very popular. He was 6 years old. There was we feel that it was young teenagers. We're not sure still. They put a pipe bomb where those children were playing to see what would happen. And it had a toggle switch on it. And my stepdad's taxi cab, had a toggle switch for his radio. So my brother at 6 years old picked that up, and it exploded, and he lost 2 fingers on each hand, which at age 6, and now that he's 56, he has never missed those fingers. But of course, when you're 6 years old and you don't really know that. At that point, it really changed our family dynamic. He became the focus, obviously, of what needed to happen in our family, and I felt very isolated. My grandmother, she then moved in with our family because my grandpa had passed away when I was 12, and we actually lived in her house. So she moved to our basement. We had it remodeled, and I went down there and I spent most of my time with her. Then I met someone. I was a waitress at 15. Of course, being impetuous and young and thinking I was so mature, we ended up getting married when I was 17 years old. And the reason I'm telling this part of the story is I would never advocate for 17-year-olds to get married, but I felt like, okay, I want my own life, my own family. I want to be an adult. So we did, and we both worked. He was a cook, I was a waitress, and then my son came along. I had him when I was 19. So I have one son, and I feel like I missed a lot of my childhood, a lot of my teenagehood. My family didn't value education. I was a fairly good artist, and at one point I wanted to go to art school, but they said, oh no, you don't need to go there. You just, do your thing. The expectation in the Midwest in those years was that you would just get married, work, have a family, and that was all there was. But there was always something inside of me that was different than that. It was hard for me because I wanted more, but I had obligations and responsibilities with a small child. At that point, I moved around a lot. I got remarried. got divorced and remarried. Really a rebound relationship. Somebody basically that could take care of me, I guess, at that point in my life in my 20s. We ultimately divorced and I moved to California. My son was 12 years old when I moved. His father had remarried. They had a child. They had a home. They had stable jobs. And so my son stayed with them. And I went to California and he stayed in Michigan. That's a whole story for another time. But I then found out that I wanted more out of my life. So I had gone back to junior college. I'd never gone to college before. I worked full time, had my son, was a single parent, worked really hard. And I met someone who was my first instructor in college. And he became ultimately my mentor. He said, look, this is your life. You can make anything out of it that you want. You just have to work hard. You have to decide, what do you want? Do you want a professional life? Do you want to just be a mom, which is perfectly fine? Or what is it that you want? And that really resonated with me. And he was part of a organization called DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America. They've actually been in a lot of high schools at the high school level. Our group was at the collegiate level, and what they do is they do business simulations. So you might present a sales plan, you might present a business plan, you might do marketing, you might do actually even like in a store, window dressing was one of the things. Entrepreneurship. So they had all these things. So I said, I think I would like to do that. So he helped me get started with that. And ultimately I became I went to a community college in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Washtenaw Community College. And that college, our chapter, I became the chapter president. And then ultimately I became the state president of DECA at the collegiate level. And at that point in my life, I thought, okay, there's not really anything that I can't do at this point. And so I began working in a corporate job. I worked for a title insurance company for homes, and I worked my way up. Then life took a little turn, and I went to Houston, Texas, and lived there for a few years. And I became the youngest vice president of a title insurance company in Houston. I was 28. My mom was ill in Michigan, and so I decided to return home. So I came back. I really couldn't find a job that was equivalent to that, so I became a mortgage loan officer. And that was fun, and I did really well. And then I got the opportunity to move to California. So that's how I ended up in California. In California, the mortgage loan business was a lot different than it was in Michigan. And I met someone, and they are a physician. And they said, could you've got really good management skills. I want to open my own clinic. Would you like to help me open my clinic? And I said, sure, I'll do that for a few months. A few months turned into 13 years. I became very proficient at that. During those years, from the time that I went to junior college, community college, I did take other classes at community college. I took some law classes, some business classes, but I never finished my degree. It was something that always nagged me in the back of my head. So I want to tell two parallel stories. I want to tell my education story, and then I want to finish with my personal story from that point. I worked in the medical clinic in LA, and the clinic did really well. The clinic's still there. I'm not. I moved to Fresno in 2001, and then I went to work for St. Agnes, and I ran their occupational health clinic for 3 years until I got tired of the politics of healthcare. I did end up, though, while I worked at St. Agnes, I decided I was finally going to finish my degree at 40-something years old, and I went to Fresno Pacific. I went to their accelerated program. So for 15 months, one night a week, we had class, a lot of work. And I'm happy to say that I was able to finish my degree in leadership and organizational development. I did that in 2003. So I was, 40, almost 45 years old at that point. From there, for my education, I thought, okay, I have my bachelor's degree. I don't really need it anymore. I need to go any further. I didn't need a master's. I didn't think I needed anything else. And I want to add that my mentor has been present this whole time. In fact, we are still friends today, and it's been now, gosh, I don't know, 40-something years that we've been friends. From there, I decided, okay, what are you going to do next? I got into educational technology, which I had no concept of. I went into a sales role, which when I look back retrospectively, a lot of my jobs that I had a customer service aspect to it. So, of course, they always had some element of what you might consider sales. And I did very well with that. But during the process of selling the educational technology, I worked a lot with schools and school districts and in classrooms, and I became enthralled with that. And so I ultimately really loved education, and I did a lot of teacher training. And then I became a substitute teacher so that I could work inside the classroom with students. And I also got a job for a few years with a local school district, and I was what they call an instructional tech coach, which meant that I went into classrooms, grades, kindergarten through 8th, and I would work side by side with a teacher, and we would help the students use the technology in the classroom, and that was really, really fun. But the corporate job, somebody from my past called me, and frankly, it was a lot more money, and I was getting closer and closer to when I was thinking about potentially retiring. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go do that for a few years and make some money, and then I can, be able to retire. Then I met another person who was a department chair at a university, and they asked me if I had my master's degree. And I said, no, I don't have my master's degree. But she said, well, if you did, we would hire you to be a professor at our school. And I thought to myself, well, now there's something I never dreamt that I would ever be, would be that this girl who got married at 17, whose family didn't value education, would ever get their master's degree. So 9 months after that date, I had my master's degree. I was 61 years old. It is never too late to finish your education. Never put your education in a back seat. If that is something that you want, you should seek it. Don't let anybody say that you can't do something. You can do whatever you want. And I'm not saying that people need to have a master's degree or or even a bachelor's degree. Get knowledge of a trade, electrician, plumber, mechanic. All of those things are viable and valuable careers that require some education. But do what makes you happy, because working every day in a job you hate is not worth it. And I will tell you that honestly now, after being in the work world now for, 40 to 47 years. I've been working almost. More than that. So, yeah, that's my education story. So I'm going to now back up, and I'm going to start back when I was 30 years old, where my education turned one way, my career turned one way, and my personal life was pretty messy for a long time. Made a lot of bad personal decisions with regards to relationships, but a lot of people do. A lot of love, or what we think is love, changes our life. So this mentor, not only did he change my professional life, but he also ended up changing my personal life. My grandmother, on her deathbed, was very repentant that they had never let my father come near me when I was a child. In fact, I found out much later that my father had tried, but was turned away by my grandparents in an effort to protect me and out of their love for me for no other reason. So my friend, my mentor, he happened to be with me when I was visiting my grandmother, and he heard all of this. We knew some information about my father. We knew where he was from. We knew his name. We knew that he had 16 siblings. Yes, 16 siblings. Unbeknownst to me, my friend started to research. And back then, the internet was not like it is today. So that was very challenging. And basically, the town that my father was from is called Fayetteville, Tennessee. And it's not a big place. And so he just started calling around to every Bradford, which was my father's name, in the phone book. And sure enough, they're like, yes, we know Mr. Bradford. We know who he is. And he ultimately found one of my aunts. And they said, oh, yeah, he lives in Texas. And so my friend ended up finding him. He called my father, and my father said, no, I don't have a daughter. I think my father was afraid. And my friend, who had spent now a while researching this, he said, I'm not going to give up. So he waited a few days. He called back. My father had thought through it, and he said, yes, I do want to meet her. So because my mentor was also had become friends with me and my family, and his son and my son actually, as children, were friends, we were going there for Christmas Eve. So we went to Christmas Eve, and the phone rings, and my friend comes and says, the phone is for you. I said, what? And then I started panicking. I thought, well, maybe something had happened to my mother. And I got on the phone, and the person on the other end said, this is your dad. And I was just flabbergasted. I had it came out of left field. I really didn't know how to feel. I had created over all those years somebody in my head of who my dad was, not the person he ended up actually being. You know, as a child, people would say, where's your dad? It was just really, you just sort of make this fictitious up. Oh, you know, he lives in another state or whatever. You know, you make up some story. I do remember as a child, one of my friend's mothers, who I found out much later had some form of mental illness, but she came and told me that I had no father. And I went home crying to my grandparents that what is she talking about? It was very traumatic, by the way. But, you know, years went on. So I will say it was such a shock to find out who my father was, to find out that he wasn't the fantasy father that I had created in my mind. He was just a guy. A lot of issues. He had 3 families. So he was married and had separated from his wife, apparently, when he and my mom were together briefly. He went back to that woman, had more children, then left her for another woman and had children. So obviously that's kind of traumatic when you're like finding out all these things about this dad that you didn't even really know, and now you're in this situation. So I did try to have a relationship with him, and I knew that he had 3 children from the first wife that lived in Fresno, and I was still living in LA when this was happening. So years went by. I would talk to him periodically on the phone. It was nothing special. It was really hard because you can't have a bond with somebody that you were, by the time you were 31 and meeting this person, they're just person. What's really strange is when you see someone who looks like you, has mannerisms like you, who it's really strange. And, you know, basically I never had therapy before then, but I did go see a psychiatrist or psychologist a few times because I was just having a really hard time dealing with all of that. But again, I knew these siblings existed. I did meet another sibling that was from a different family. It was really strange because he also looked like me, and it was just really strange. So about 10 years went by, and my father called me. I was living in LA, and he said, I'm going to come visit my brother who lives in somewhere in California, and, you know, maybe we can meet up and have lunch. And I thought to myself, okay, you know, maybe that's a good idea. You know, let me do that. And I said, well, where do you want to meet? And he's like, oh, well, I can meet you way far away. And I'm thinking to myself, here's this guy who I wasn't on his payroll for 31 years. He never had to do anything in my life. He can't even drive out of his way to come see me. So I was a little irritated with that. And he said, well, I am going to go up to Fresno to see my kids up there. I said, well, when are you going? He said, I'm going to go there tomorrow. And I said, well, okay, I'll see you tomorrow in Fresno. He didn't know what to do with himself. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to meet them. I've been asking to meet them for years. I'm going. And he didn't know what to say. And so sure enough, I drove up here from LA. And I met up with him, and I said, okay, I want to meet them. He said, well, they're working and making all these excuses. He said, okay, well, your sister, half-sister, she's willing to come have dinner. So sure enough, we went to dinner. I met my half-sister. By then I was 40 years old. Met her for the first time, and we spent about 4 hours together and just talking about everything, talking about our lives, because it turns out that she moved here from Michigan when she was in the 3rd grade. Her mother married a very bad man as her stepfather, and she did not have a good childhood either. But my dad was in and out of her life. He wasn't in and out of my life. He didn't know really what to do again. He just sort of sat there while we talked through it. Ultimately, I did develop a good relationship with her. And when I had a change in my life in LA, where I had a relationship breakup, I ended up coming up here, and I never left. And that's how I got to Fresno. But when people meet my sister and I in a public setting that don't really know us, they find out our history, and they say, well, how did you both? Because my sister's very successful as well. She also has a master's degree. She's done really well. She was in education for 30 years and she retired, and now she does real estate. They say, wow, you two had such incredibly diverse lives, a lot of traumatic events, a lot of different relationships, a lot of different things in your life. How did you get to where you're going to be? And this brings my personal story and my education story together. These two things, they were parallel things that happened, but the driving force was always that I wanted more out of my life. I wanted to do more for my son. I wanted to be a role model to my son that I never had. And again, my grandparents were good, hardworking people. My mom, she was hardworking. She had a lot of issues. She passed away when she was 65. But without my education, without my drive to succeed, without my mentor, I have no idea where my life would be today. And so I want to leave the end of this story with that it's inside you. It's inside you what you do. Don't ever let people say you can't. You can, but you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to work really hard for it. My sister worked really hard. I worked really hard. One of my half-brothers worked really hard. My half-brother that I grew up with, he works in a blue-collar job, but he works really hard. We all have really good work ethic. We don't exactly know how we all got it, but we do. Maybe for me, I think it was from my grandparents. I can't speak for my sister or my other brother. So no matter what life throws at you, and it throws a lot of stuff your way, that's what life is. You just have to try to overcome it. So today I'm a professor part-time at an online university, a very well-respected online university. I actually here at CMAC, I have, and in Orange County, I have a cable show called Let's Talk Tech, where I teach technology to mature audiences. I have a senior travel show where I talk about travel with senior audiences, and I travel. I'm happily married. My husband and I are about to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary in just a couple of weeks. And I have 2 stepsons. I have 5 grandchildren altogether from 11 to 18. My granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, she's a freshman at Fresno State. She actually won the one of the SMIC camp scholarships for teaching, so that's what she's going to be, a teacher. So life is good. It wasn't always good. There were a lot of things that happened, but I know in my heart that things always happen for a reason. We may not know why at the time, and maybe it's a bad thing, maybe it's a good thing, who knows. I have one aunt left on my mom's side. She's the only family member other than some cousins. My brother is married, but he has no children, my half-brother that I grew up with. My other siblings, half-siblings, are scattered around. They've got some children. I do have still my father of the 17 total kids. I ended up meeting those family members, the remaining siblings, when I was about 12 years ago. And I've become close to one of my aunts. That was my father's sister. They actually were sharecroppers. So my grandparents, Charles and Bessie, they lived to be 95 years old with 17 children. And they lived on a farm, and they never owned it. They were sharecroppers. And of those children, as I mentioned, 4 are left. I have one uncle. Well, actually, only 3 are left. I have 2 aunts and one uncle left on my father's side. And I do have a relationship with them. And I speak to them as often as I can. And I'll probably be going to see them again soon. So that's really it. It's a crazy story. It's been a crazy ride. I hope I still have, at 67, I hope I still have 20, 25 years that I can keep going. I want to be able to see my grandkids have their lives and just keep going. Just don't ever let anybody get you down. Set those goals, work towards the goals, and meet those goals. And that's it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi. So I'm going to get this started with a little bit of an introduction. My name is Rena Gonzalez, and I am a Central Valley native. I am here today with
DJ Mr. Leonard.
also known officially as Leonard Longmire.
Yes.
That's his
Leonard L. Longmire.
And I wanted to partake in this interview with Leonard because I feel there's an interesting, there's kind of like interesting perspective, given that I was raised in the Valley. I lived here from the ages of 2 to 17 and a half, leaving in the fall of 1995. And I found out that Leonard arrived in 1996. I didn't think I was coming back and returned in 2017. While Leonard has stayed in Fresno since he arrived, unless he wants to correct me. But we clearly both now are at a moment in our lives where we are tried and true Fresnans. Yes. We love Fresno. We love our community. So I just wanted to kind of take some time today to talk about our perspective. And we do have a set of questions that CMAC has provided us, which are great. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and ask him a couple questions, and we'll kind of go back and forth if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So we know your name is DJ Mr. Leonard, but where does your name come from?
So I arrived here in the summer of 1996, July 31st to be exact. It was 115 degrees in the valley.
It was a cool day.
And boy, I didn't know what cool was until I got off the plane with my Nautica boating jacket and thought, geez, I should just dump this in the trash can and keep it moving. But anyway, reuniting with my family out here, family retired educators, but at the time my dad was English professor at Fresno State and it eventually became former chair of the English department as well. And I didn't know my life was going to begin and I would become what I'm known now as DJ Mr. Leonard. Fashion has always been one of my passions as well, of course, outside of music. And I got an opportunity to be on radio at Fresno State, KFSR, due to connecting with some students from Fresno State who worked with me at Barnes & Noble at the time when Barnes & Noble was on Blackstone and Shaw at the corner there. And connecting with those associates, music was in the forefront, and I was just honored that they thought of me to tap into jazz and my music knowledge and be on air and on radio. And long story short, ended up getting my own jazz program, which they were like, Leonard, you have to come up with a name for the show. And I was just like, really? I have no idea. But in short, I just said, hey, Mr. Leonard's Jazz Suite. And that is how I end up becoming DJ Mr. Leonard.
What was the name of the show that invited you to Fresno State initially? Was there a show?
The funny thing about it is the gentleman's show who I was a guest on, Michael Howe, he had a alternative rock show. And I can't remember what the name of his show was in particular, but I do remember the station, which was Fresno State's campus radio station, was known as the Flaming Chihuahua at the time. Anyhow, when I came on, there was some great programming in reference to a wonderful reggae program. I think there was a really good hip-hop program at the time that was on, amongst a world show that was pretty good. So those are some of the things I do remember outside of the heavy metal and the hard rock and alternative shows. But nevertheless, my musical knowledge in jazz music that I shared was, embraced. So it turned into a 15-year radio career.
And now?
That has catapulted me into the community of doing community events and connecting with fellow artists and creatives and community representatives like yourself and others. And it has truly been a blessing.
I don't remember when we officially met. I don't remember the day that I shook your hand. I do remember that in 2018, you were at the M Street Arts Complex.
Yes.
Which was where I've been a resident since the summer of July 2017 when I returned to Fresno. And it's kind of funny because Fresno State is a huge driver of Fresno. Mm-hmm. I returned to be an attorney for Fresno State's Foundation and for several other of their nonprofit arms. And I am no longer there, but I did love my time at Fresno State. I love what the campus does for the students and for the Valley, and the way it prepares our next generation. So it is awesome because you were there that's a long time, 15 years. That's a long time. That's quite a career.
To volunteer your time. But, always been about community. And I say that because growing up in the Midwest in Ohio, in a small town of Alliance, when radio ruled at the time, and music and community festive programs and things existed, it tied everyone in and raised a community, and just inspired a lot of us to one day want to get out and add our little piece to the puzzle as community representatives and creatives. And so, being on the radio was a great opportunity and a lot of fun in regards to having a music program in jazz, especially when I thought I was going to grow up and become a jazz drummer. So,
wow,
it's a nice buffer to fall just short of your dreams and become a jazz radio host.
There's still time. There's always time. So I'm going to go back to our question sheet because I see a good one based off of what you just said. That's okay. What's the most important or significant thing you've done, and how did it make you feel?
Well, I will say that one of my goals, you could say short-term or long-term goals, when I became a radio personality with a jazz program, was that hopefully jazz would be on the air on this station consistently. And when I say consistently, meaning more than just once a week or once 3 or 4 hours out of the week. And it exceeded my expectations because now there's jazz, I believe, 7 days a week on the air at Fresno State. And there was a point in time historically where we were able to arrive at having the very first Fresno State Billy Higgins Jazz Festival for about 4 years. And the late Billy Higgins is truly a American and global jazz icon and drummer who have played with everyone from Miles Davis to Coltrane, Thelonious, just so many greats, Bobby Hutcherson, many. So to me, to be a part of that history was beyond an honor.
It's impactful. It's very impactful.
Yes, indeed.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like right now I have an exhibit at the Betty Rodriguez Library related to my creativity studio, to my art studio. And kind of the beautiful thing about what we do is we never will know our impact. We just today, Leonard, you walked in and within 5 minutes, 2 people recognized you. So what we do matters.
It does.
And I think in the present day, we have to remind ourselves and give all our fellow creatives, artists, musicians, all the love and support.
Yes, indeed.
And that's, I think, why it's so easy for me to talk to you and to share an appreciation of what you do and the things that we really see our friends doing in the community for the community.
Yes, I can't agree more. And I try to do my best to be a friendly reminder in the community as I have done public speaking at Fresno State and in various colleges here and universities about American music culture and the impact that we have had on the world globally as we speak of art, music, and culture. And, once again, as a creative or as creatives, we were impacted and inspired in our lives that put us in a position to where we are. And so we have lived that experience to know how impactful and how imperative it is because it breeds life, right. Literally. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask another question.
Yeah, by all means.
How did you decide on your career?
I think my career decided me. And I say that because I've been on a journey that I didn't even know I was on. I've had various deja vu moments like, God, why am I standing here in a record store with maybe barely a couple dollars in my pocket, but tons of records and cassettes in my hand without enough to pay for them? What do you want me to do? I'm supposed to be in class in college right now. I know there's a reason why, I'm here again in the same spot.
Right.
Like, how do I break this pattern? And sure enough, I remember one time, just, being able to have access to some incredible music. And I don't know, your mind plays tricks on you sometime. And just, for whatever reason, this thought just entered my head like, man, what good is it for you to have all this wonderful music if you're not going to be able to share it with anyone outside of, you being at home and friends that come over? But that was me speaking, I guess, into the universe once again out of that, what is this about? Not knowing that God was like, hey, you're going to end up playing music for masses of people, whether you know it or not. So just hold that feeling and thought, So anyhow, it just makes me think about moments like that from time to time, when I'm out here in the community doing what I'm doing. But the reward is, once again, just seeing how music is impacting others as it has impacted, each one of us as creatives. So
I'm going to go back to the day where it was 115 degrees and you were ready to ditch your Nautica jacket. On that day, did you drive around Fresno?
So,
or sometime near that day?
I know where this question is coming from. Yeah, I got a story about that day, all right, because I'll never forget when my parents picked me up from the airport and took me home. And once again, my parents up there in the Woodward Park area. And we're just in the house, in the air conditioning, and I'm just relaxing and gathering myself. And all of a sudden, I remember hearing in the house this, ooh, and then it got quiet. And I was like, what was that? And my mom goes, oh, it's just the air conditioning shutting off. It'll be okay. And I'm like, Mom, it's 115 degrees outside. How can you be so calm and casual and say, oh, it'll come back on eventually? Am I going to sit here and just die? But anyway, needless to say, I was just like, where have I come? What is going on here in Fresno in this desert heat? And how do I find life in Fresno? And my parents took me out to the mall, Sierra Vista Mall of all malls.
They went from, so let me be clear, you went from Woodward Park area to Sierra Vista?
Yeah. So, obviously
so yours
Clovis is not far from Woodward Park, although, I'm learning all this as my parents are sharing with me what they're going to do. And, once again, we're leaving, Leonard, if you would like to come with us, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know anything about Fresno and don't know what a Clovis is or where Clovis is or Sierra Vista Mall, but I'll go. Needless to say, it was an experience that made me more curious to finding life or what life had more to offer in Fresno after coming back with them, to the point to where I think my mom noticed I was a little distraught and said, hey, take the keys, take the car, drive around Fresno and, see what you can discover for yourself. And I'm just like, okay. And I'm glad I did. I drove on down through Fig Garden and through various, residents, and finally hit Olive and made a hard left on Olive and started to notice plenty of galleries at the time now. and cafes, coffee shops, bistros, lounges. Of course, Tower's quite different then than it is today, but at least it let me know that I'm going to be okay. There is some art and culture here in Fresno and a cultural community. And I'm glad that that did happen, but because obviously I would not have been here. I was plotting on driving home and giving my story on how I was catching the next flight out of Fresno.
So we're glad you found the Tower District that day.
Yes, and I'm glad the Tower discovered me as well.
When I was here in the early 90s, I didn't even know about the Tower District. My main hangouts were North Fresno at the drive-in during high school. And my mom worked at Fashion Fair. She worked at Macy's.
Oh, yeah.
And I always say my mom worked at Macy's when Macy's was like Nordstrom. Macy's was so fancy back then. And my mom was my mom was brilliant. Let's just say that, because my mom worked at Macy's with the intent that she was going to go back to school, because she went back to school when we were kids. And she did that so she could go to Fresno State. So she would go to work and then go to school in the evenings and, come home when she was done. But I just think she was just so brilliant to have figured out that was her plan. She because my mom worked at Macy's, you brought up fashion. We always dressed to the nines.
Well, now I understand.
Yeah, it all makes sense once I explain that my mom worked at Macy's when I was a kid.
I worked at Macy's seasonally around the holidays.
At Fashion Fair?
In the men's shoe department.
Oh.
Yep, just briefly, but there was a time. Yeah.
I remember as a kid calling Macy's, and that I would have to page my mother, and it's only someone who your parent works in a department store would you even know what that means.
Right.
There's the bell system, and my mom had a certain bell that she would have to run to the phone to a real phone, not a cell phone. And have to pick up and say what is going on. And she usually was like, if the house isn't on fire, please don't call me. But no, she would always
remind me again.
She would always
now, and I don't mean
get
to
paged.
interrupt. But as you grew up in Fresno, what was the area or high school you attended?
So I lived in Madera.
Oh.
I lived in Madera, and I call it Madera Country.
Okay.
I didn't live in Madera Ranchos. I lived in the county area.
So that's why it was a while for you discovered the Tower District.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
I got it.
So I don't think I discovered the tower really maybe until I came back. I knew about it. I knew that it existed, and I'd seen lots of pictures. I knew it was cool. I mean, so, and now I'm there like every day. If I'm in Fresno, I'm there.
Here's a story you might appreciate. When I got my job at Barnes & Noble, and I'm just starting to connect with folks and get to know some people there, I came to work one day, and I told a few of the associates that, hey, I was out in Fresno, and I went down to this one area that I think, I really like and seems cool. Got, Tower Theater is down there, and blah, 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 blah. And they're just like, oh, the Tower District, Leonard, you were down there? There's a lot of weirdos down there. You sure you want to hang out down there? And I was like, yeah, I think that's the coolest place I've discovered so far since I've been in Fresno. That let me know all I needed to know moving forward out here in Fresno. But, nevertheless, I'll never forget that. Never forget that. It was awesome.
But to return to your question, I went to high school at Sierra High School up in the mountains.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So it was a very unique. I don't find many people from Sierra in the valley. They were kind of like every once in a while I'll find people who went to Sierra. I know there's plenty of people here who still went to Sierra, but that's where I went and graduated in 95.
Oh, okay.
High school. So, and I'm going to go back to what person had the most positive influence on your life?
Well, the early stages of me even becoming, DJ Mr. Leonard, as we speak of art and music, would had to come from my mom's youngest brother, who, as I was growing up, I was the only child, and I wanted a brother. And so my uncle was young, but he was my uncle, but I used to try to call him my brother. And my uncle was not going for that. It's like, I'm still your uncle and you're going to call me uncle. But he was like a big brother to me as well. But he was a good mentor because he took me under his wing as his favorite nephew and shared with me all the musical knowledge that he had. And he was quite talented and creative and gifted with being able to play various musical instruments from drums, guitar, bass. He was the first person that taught me how to listen to music and recognize harmony, melody, and rhythm. This is, pre-CD, Spotify, this is just straight vinyl action and 8-track maybe, reel to reel. Now, I know we know about reel to reel. But anyhow, I used to put a record on and we would sit down and he said, listen, before I drop the needle, we're just going to listen to the drummer for the first time through this song. We're just going to follow the drummer. And I would be excited. Okay, of course, yeah. And then he would lift the needle up and then he would say, okay, this time we're just going to listen to the bass player. Just going to follow the bass player. And I'd be like, all right. And he'd put the needle down and he would go through each section, instrument, horn section, vocals. And then he would say, okay, now we're going to put the needle down and listen to the song in its entirety. And then we'll talk about what we received from the music or what we heard. Now, I didn't know that that's what he was doing at the time. And he was teaching me how to listen to music. For those who may not realize, there's a way to listen to music and pick up on rhythm, harmony, and melody. In this beat generation that we're in, where a lot of folks, that's all they hear is just the rhythm. They're missing out on all the other elements of, the music. So, but so he was probably the first person that had a serious impact on my life musically and creatively. And I started playing drums, I believe, when I was 4 or 5 years old. And that's when I had dreams of becoming a jazz drummer.
Do you still play the drums?
I can still play, but I would.
Do you have drums at your house?
No.
Not that serious.
Please don't put me in a jazz band. You might put me in a little garage band or a little funk and soul band. So, but that's about it.
We have Porch Fest. You don't have to just DJ at Porch Fest.
Yeah,
I might find those drums for you.
When Audie's in the Tower existed, they used to have jam sessions. And I was hired one time to DJ a particular jam session, which was called Jamming on the One at the time, that my good friend Johnny Quiros used to facilitate and organize. And every now and again they would say, hey, we have some people that want to jam and sit in on the next set, but we don't have a drummer. Is there anyone that would like to play drums or that can play drums so, the next group can play and jam? So every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I'll go. I had no idea that a lot of people, though, didn't know that I could get on the drums and play. And I was like, I hope I didn't create a monster, because now people are like, DJ Mr. Leonard is on the drums. I'm like, oh God, please don't ask me to play something hard. But nevertheless, very flattering, good times. And I always cherish those moments. So, yeah.
I like that it was your uncle because the reason why I went to law school was because my aunt was a lawyer and my dad's older sister, and I always thought she was the smartest person I ever knew. And I always liked the way, always liked her logic.
Yes.
I felt like she was just so well composed and just always analyze things a little bit different than other people. And I felt like she just was smarter, and I wanted to be that smart.
Yeah.
So I think I'm still aspiring to meet that, but your family, especially your aunts and your uncles, because I'm like, I aspire to be the best Thea I can be every day.
As you should.
Yes, and that's actually the reason why I came back. My sister had 2 kids, kind of back to back, and I kept coming. The girl, Ori, her birthday is in April, and my nephew's birthday is in August. And then you have, when you mix in all the other, holidays and everything, I was driving home a lot. I was driving home I was tearing up the 99 to get back from Riverside, which is where I lived for basically half of my life. And it just got to be where I thought, maybe my heart needs to be in Fresno, and I physically need to be in Fresno. So I say, I wanted to be near the kids and watch them grow up. And at the time that I came back, I think they were 4 and 6. And then my sister, lo and behold, that a year later, I don't even know if it was a year later, so I'm pregnant. So another one on the way. So Theodora, it's nice because I've been here for her whole life.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So I was there, at Clovis Community the night she was born.
Yeah.
I was here when Ori was born at St. Agnes. Manoli was the first, and I didn't really feel myself. My sister was having the baby, so I didn't really feel like I needed to be there. But I will never live that down with my sister that I wasn't in Fresno. I was actually in Spain. Oh. And I think I was on a flight. So it made it even. My sister and I are close at moments, and that was probably a moment she needed her sister.
Yes, I'm sure. So
when I landed in New Jersey, I remember it clear as day, I checked my phone, and this wasn't, cell phones back then, this was 13 years ago, weren't that big of a deal.
Right.
It wasn't not like now. Right. And my phone turned on and it started buzzing, and I was traveling with a friend, and I said, "Oh, I think the baby was born." So sure enough, he had been born while I think I was traveling back.
I see.
So again, try to be the best aunt that I can be, and hopefully will. I'm not saying that any of these children need to become lawyers. That's not what I'm saying here. I try to foster their creativity like your uncle did for you, because I feel like when you're a child, it is so much easier to get in the zone of creativity than when you're an adult. Because I struggle with adults coming into my studio and not knowing how to receive it, not knowing what to do with things. Oh my gosh, I'm not creative. And
I hate to hear that.
Yeah, I don't like hearing that either.
That especially knowing what I know now, because I know how we were raised as we speak of society. It always seemed like creativity was always downplayed to a certain extent. You can be creative, but you got to get a real job, or you got to choose something else to balance that out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, we're creative beings, every last one of us. And if we don't start celebrating that initially, then you can turn some folks off to where they start to believe that they no longer are creative. And if I may, this is one of my favorite little short stories. I have to share this with you as you bring this up. And I'm sorry, but like I said, it's one of my favorites. I was at a friend's and hanging out, and she had a couple over. And somehow the conversation was around music or being creative.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband, he was very quiet, but she's vocal. Obviously, they made a good couple. They balanced each other out. But anyhow, we were talking about creativity, and she goes, I'm not creative, my sister is, but I'm not. And all of a sudden, her husband said, what do you mean you're not creative? You're the only person I know that can be in the car, hear a song one time, and remember and recite the words, the lyrics word for word. And I just thought that was just the greatest thing I could have ever heard. I was cracking up when I heard that because he was just so quiet and mute. And that just jumped out of him when she went there. And a lot of people don't understand that, we're creative beings by nature. Like, yeah, it's in you, but you have to go there.
Yeah.
And sometimes even when you don't, it comes out. And then you can't explain why. Like that guy says, you're in the car reciting everything, like you've been listening to it forever and you just heard it for the first time. Like, how can you do that? Yeah, anyway.
Talented lady.
People have gifts. Yep. Creative gifts. But, growing up, as you speak of influences, there was another major influence, but it wasn't from someone I grew up with. It was from TV and Soul Train. And let me tell you, growing up in my day, Saturday at 12 o'clock, I believe, when Soul Train came on, boy, you could hear a pin drop in the neighborhood. Whether you were washing your car on a Saturday or outside playing or whatever, you just made sure you got chores done. Everyone stopped playing. You got your car washed by that time or after the time, but nothing happened when Soul Train came on. It was like the earth stood still. Now, American Bandstand came on I think it came on first when we
Came
lived.
on earlier than that, yeah.
But we were all waiting for Soul Train. Yeah. I mean, American Bandstand was cool, but...
Yeah. So, and I had told you I had an American Bandstand story, and it just goes to the point of childhood. And my mom we would normally wake up and watch cartoons or whatever, and American Bandstand would be on, and sometimes my mom would be like, hey girls, American Bandstand's on, your aunt's on today. My aunt was an American Bandstand dancer.
Awesome.
She's a very, very good dancer. So she had her partner. This is my dad's younger sister.
Oh, okay.
And by younger, I think they have an age gap of about 10 years. So she has always been more, like you said, more like a sister to me, kind of in how I grew up and was raised. She was always very, very cool, always dressed awesome, worked for television and all kinds of cool stuff. But yeah, she was on American Bandstand, and me and my sister, in our naivete, thought that she was waving at us through the TV screen. So we would just go up to the TV screen and wave at the TV screen at the end, because, they would pan through all the dancers and they would be waving.
Oh, that'd be great to see video.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any, but that is me and my sister definitely remember doing that as kids.
Now that is awesome. So now, for her to have the opportunity to be on American Bandstand at the time, where was American Bandstand shot? Was it in California?
It would have been in, I'm assuming Burbank.
Okay.
Yeah, probably Burbank. Yeah. So my parents are from Southern California.
Oh, good. Okay.
Originally, yeah. So my parents lived about 2 miles away from each other in very small cities in Southern California. And so all of my extended family lived in Southern California, which is in part why I decided to go to Southern California at 17 and a half and go to the university down there because I liked it there.
Well, of course.
I really liked it there. It's fun.
We used to see American bands say anything from California. Being in the Midwest, we was just like, oh, we got to get to California. So, especially Southern California.
Yeah.
But when my mom, and this is the story that was told to me, was pregnant with me watching American Bandstand one day. There was a gentleman on there, and she liked the name that he had. And so when she was naming me, she gave me my middle name after this gentleman whom she's heard the name of on American Bandstand. So my name is Leonard Littell Longmire. So his name was Littell, whoever he was on American Bandstand. And my mom tells me that that's where I got my middle name from. So
my mom did something similar. My name is from Miss Universe. I believe 1976. I'd have to look it up. I know I told a friend here in Fresno, and she did a deep dive on my name, and it was great. I actually think she was from, I don't remember what country, but she actually was also an attorney.
Oh, okay.
Not that that's any reason. My mom just thought it was pretty, wanted something unique. I definitely think she achieved that because
yes, indeed,
my name is often misspelled and mispronounced at every level. So.
And it's so beautiful. I like Rena.
Thank you.
I love Rena.
Thank you.
Big time.
So, we still have some time. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I just want to take a moment of gratitude and thank you so much for all that you bring to this community, not just creatively, but with your divine energy and spirit. It's always been an honor to be in your presence and meet you. And yes, M Street Studios is my vivid memory of us connecting. And I always wanted to come back to M Street Studios and be closer to hang out where Rena was. But, I don't know. But anyhow.
The year is young, Leonard.
I was like, when is she going to become the president of M Street? No.
No, I will not be taking over.
She can do everything else.
I've decided this year was my intention. My overall intention was going to be community, which I think is the perfect year because today we are here at CMAC. And I was, with my dad earlier, he was giving his history of the Central Valley, which I am still kind of overwhelmed by all that I learned this morning. So I'm very grateful. A lot of the programming that's coming out this year is a result of community voting to approve Measure P, which was money for the arts and programming. And I've only attended, the programming has just started rolling out. I have attended a few things. I took my niece to something that Hella Fresno put on. And the 2-hour program that I got to go to with my niece, I'm pretty sure she's going to remember it for years to come. It will be like similar, the story of you listening to music. It might be that my aunt took me out on a day and showed me downtown Fresno.
Oh, wow.
So I love being a part of the community. Yes. I love giving back.
Yes,
it is. I think both of us, our families have instilled in us a great deal of commitment to public service and giving back. And it's just wonderful. And I love it. And I will get you back to M Street, Leonard. I hear you.
I appreciate that. And yes, I agree with you. I always tell people you can't spell community without COMMUNITY. That unity is very, very important.
And I'm hoping we can maybe share this out, this podcast. So, Leonard, how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Thanks to good old social media, I am on Instagram at DJ Mr. Leonard. Also, you can www.djmrleonard.com. I hope that wasn't too many W's, but
That's
anyway,
okay.
I got my website, and also on Facebook, professional DJ page, just DJ Mr. Leonard on Facebook as well. So those are probably the best places to reach me and keep up with what I'm doing in the community. So,
what's your favorite gig that you've ever had in Fresno? You probably already touched on it a little bit.
Well, I'll say this, 'cause there's a couple, but one that really stands out is, since I'm a big Prince fan, the day that we had Prince taken away from us, within 24 hours, I was called upon to honor his royal badness in the Tower District at Strummers. And I'll never forget that day, obviously, but it was packed. I remember I arrived there for sound check at 9 o'clock. The event was supposed to start at 10. And at 9 o'clock, there was about 100 women on the side of the other side of the Strummers, just, waiting to get in. And I couldn't find a parking space. And I was just like, oh my God. And, I live in the tower, not far away. But I was thinking, man, am I going to have to get someone to drop me off, so I can at least go in and do my thing? But I never forget, we began the night and we had Purple Rain playing. It's on rotation on this big screen and TVs in there. And so at the end of the night, obviously the last song of the night you would play in memory of Prince would be Purple Rain. And I kid you not, I'll never forget that once I began to play Purple Rain, I look up and the movie, it literally synced up perfectly at that time. And Purple Rain was airing, on the big screen as I'm playing Purple Rain. And I kid you not, I looked around and there was not a dry eye in the place. Even security was shedding a tear. And I had to gather my emotions because it was the most powerful experience one could ever have as a DJ or, curator of an event. And then even after it was time to go, they were escorting people, to, go outside because we could no longer be inside. And I think people hung out for another hour just in the middle of the street out front, just in his honor. So those are, just memories like that, outside of our Motown nights that we used to have in the tower. Just seeing young and old together, mom and, her kids, the youth and their parents all in the same place partying together. And I got to share this one because this was another one of my favorite moments and stories. There was these two young, handsome gentlemen hanging out with their buddies in front of me. And it was the end of the night. I'm breaking down to leave. Music's still playing in the background. And they met some girls. And then one guy said, hey, man, the girls, they want to meet us later, we have to go so we can go, meet up with the girls. And the guy goes, oh, man, I'm going to have to meet up with you guys a little later. And they're like, why, man? Why can't you go now? It's like, because my mom's over there dancing still, and I got to give her a ride home. And she was over there just in Motown land still having so much fun, and I never get that. And it's just the greatest joy, because as a DJ, to present music to a community, that's all you ever want. It's for all generations, all races, young and old, and everybody in between to come out and celebrate, and just be together. And to have those experiences happen right before your eyes where you or a part of that is just one of the greatest feelings ever. And I'll never forget that. Never, never. And I could go on. I could probably do a full podcast telling the stories that I've experienced with this gift and blessing of, being a curator, a selector in the community. And I tell people, maybe I should put a camera on my shoulder because you witness so many miracles.
It's called Ray-Ban Meta Glasses. We can get you a pair.
Yeah, I think I will have to do that because I'm like, who's going to do my social media? I can't do it all. I just got to focus on the music.
It's hard.
I think I'm a multitasker until, I got to multitask.
One thing at a time. Thank you for being here with me today and sharing this time. I will say you are where you are supposed to be.
Oh, thank you so much.
As I believe I am where I'm supposed to be at this time in the universe. And I'm just grateful that we have crossed paths and we actually really physically crossed paths in the airport last fall.
Literally.
Very, very fun to run into.
University. Oh, here you go.
In San Francisco of all places. And we rode in one of those tiny,
Yes, we did.
very blessed. But we were in those tiny plane coming back to Fresno together.
And I felt quite comfortable after running into my favorite friend, Rena, going back to Fresno.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we're good. So I asked you to come participate in a very cool project that I think is important to me because it's Measure P funding for the arts. The arts are important to our family.
Yep.
I thank you so much for instilling in all of us an appreciation and a love of serving our community. And I'm sorry to get emotional. It's just so important. I came home after thinking I was never going to come home, and I love it here. It's great. There's so much opportunity for everyone, meaning my friends, your colleagues, the kids now. And when I say the kids, I mean Elisa's kids. And you and Mom made the decision when, I was 2, and I think you might get into this a little, to move up here. The Central Valley has been home to you and Mom for 45 years now. And for me, it's been a little broken because I spent half my life in Southern California. I truly love it here. I give back how I can from your modeling, Mom's modeling. I see it now in my sister, the way her and her family gives back. We give back very generously because of your role model. And I'm grateful that you picked for us to be here. I just wanted you to share whatever stories you want to share about the Central Valley and kind of like how you grew up here, and then, whatever you want to share about all the opportunities we've had here.
Well, when you first asked me, first of all, thank you. I'm interested that you got emotional. I understand why. But one of the probably unique memories that I have is that when I was 2 years old, I recall very vividly that the decision was made by my grandparents, that's Mercedes Valdez Garcia and Manuel Jesus Garcia, my maternal grandparents, who were living in Laverne, California at the time, and when I was born, that's 1954. And in 1956, they were my grandfather, Manuel J. Garcia, Grandpa Tutis was his nickname, was provided with an offer to move to the Central Valley by the company that he worked for. He worked for an orange packing company called Pure Gold, which was on Arrow Highway in Laverne. And he had been working with them in the capacity of basically being a foreman running a crew, picking oranges and picking lemons. At the time in the Los Angeles area and in Orange County got the name because they grew oranges, but Laverne and many of the surrounding communities, Claremont and San Dimas, Azusa, all had orange groves. And so he had an abundance of work there, but as suburban sprawl left out of the LA area, those groves started getting taken out. So his company, Pure Gold, offered him a possibility of relocating to the Central Valley. So at the time, my parents were going to college. They would be the first in either of their families to go to college. And because I was very young, I was 2, I was at my grandparents, Grandma Mercy and Grandpa Tutti, provided care. So I moved in with them. When they moved to Strathmore, California in 1956, I moved with them. And I recall sitting in the middle of my grandfather's Chevrolet truck, the gear shift knob right in front of me, riding for, obviously a number of hours. And that was my home, and basically until I turned 5. And once I turned 5, I moved back with my parents to go to school there in the Laverne area. So I have a lot of memories of growing up with my grandparents in Strathmore, California, which was a small 3-acre olive ranch, if you will. And my grandfather ran the labor crews from that place. So it was a regular occurrence for me to see workers unloading, loading onto a truck, being taken to work, and then coming back and so forth. And so I grew up with a very unique kind of situation with my grandparents. So one of the best stories I have was because my grandfather was this contractor, he did all different aspects of the orange industry, including the harvesting, including the maintenance of the grove, the irrigation of the grove. But one of the instances that I remember very vividly was the first opportunity to have a job. And my grandfather offered me, and I'll never forget, he go, "Do you want to work today?" And I recall I was 6 years old. It was the summer of 1961, and I was going to be turning 7. And the job was to wrap what they call insulators, which is maybe like an 18-inch by 6-inch piece of the equivalent of the kind of paper that you put on a roof, and you wrap it around the young stalk of a tree, an orange tree or a lemon tree, and it has these little wires attached to it, and you twist the wires, and after you've wrapped it around, the stalk there is, the trunk of the tree is insulated from, the weather and a better chance of surviving and so forth. So I was offered a penny a tree to put an insulator on, and I just thought that was the greatest. Because we went to, and I could take you back there right now. It's on what used to be called Old Highway 65. It's now called Orange Belt Drive. It's just north of Porterville. Maybe because the town's gotten bigger. It used to be several miles out of town. It might be a mile out of town now because the town has grown. But we, on the side sloping of this hill was this grove that Pure Gold was going to put in. And I remember, my grandfather saying, "Okay, here they are," and there's looking down what seemed to be miles and miles of trees, but obviously was just, a row of trees. But when you're 6 years old, it looks like an ominous, daunting task. And I remember he said, "Make sure you count them, because there's many a tree." And I was told that at least twice. And so I kept very close track, and I was all the way down the hill, and I got part way up a hill, and I don't know if whatever my grandfather had to do there was done, but he says, okay, it's time to go. How many trees? And I remember 77. He goes, okay, I'm going to get you 77 pennies. So I got 77 pennies. Now, I don't recall how I spent them, but at that time, 77 pennies was, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 comic books, at least a couple of little candy bars. So I remember that because it was, he said, I had a job. I have a job for you. And so it's interesting that when you look back at all of the things that happen in your life, that's one of them, because being with my grandfather, Grandpa Tuti, he was always fun to be around. He was a very loving man, and in his capacity as a foreman, I never saw him not be respectful of his workers. And I think that's why he always had a full crew. People always wanted to work for his crew because, and I'm going to switch stories now, because as I would continue to grow up, and probably just a few years later, maybe when I was 10 or perhaps 11 years old, again, during the summer, and the routine was very much a routine. You get up probably somewhere around 5 in the morning. He would say, wake up, get ready. You had to, go take care of your business and get down to have breakfast with Grandma. And by that time, 4 of my female cousins had moved in with my grandparents because my uncle had gotten a divorce, and his job was in Oakland. So the 4 girls, Debbie, Beverly, Georgianne, and Julie, also stayed with my grandparents, but they stayed there all the time. I just came during the summer, Christmas vacation, spring break. So truly, I thought up until the time until I went into high school, I thought everybody went and picked oranges during the summer. So it's kind of humorous. But I remember that part of our task, getting up early, being part of the orange picking crew, that I would often be paired with usually Debbie, my older cousin, and Beverly, my older cousin, and the 3 of us would take a set of 4 orange trees. Says normally when you used to pick as a crew, you would, as an individual, get a set. If you were a man, you probably got a set of 4 orange trees for you to pick, and if you could do that all by yourself, you could, do pretty well in terms of picking boxes, because at the time they were boxes, not bins. And so the boxes were, I don't know, maybe 18 inches by 12 inches by, I don't know, maybe 3 feet long, and you got 50 cents a box. Well, 50 cents a box was a big deal. And so if all 3 of us as cousins would work together, and we all, could clean up the set, because you didn't want to just pick 3 trees, you had to pick the 4. So the next time the crew moved, all the trees were picked cleanly. You didn't want to leave like one tree with what my grandpa used to call shiners on them, with oranges on them. So the 3 of us could pick a set. We could do the work of a man that was a good picker. And usually you could get somewhere, I want to say about 6 to 7 boxes per tree. So if you worked well, and again, remember, we're 10, 11 years old, and make $5 or $6 a day, that was a lot of money. That was a lot of money. And I remember when we used to get our check, well, because I didn't have a Social Security number, my check was usually made out to my grandmother. So I kind of never really saw my check, and didn't really get that. If we wanted to get something, all we had to do was say, can I have like $1 for this? Or because we didn't go to the town much, we didn't go to the store much. That was just, you picked and came home. And so the next part of this story was one of my assignments was, and probably because I was a boy, was I had to pick one whole bag of oranges, a sack of oranges that you would carry, probably about maybe 40 pounds worth, and it needed to be in the back corner of the truck because we all rode home in the truck, in a pickup truck. And I can recall that we would get home, and let me backtrack a little bit, because one of the things that was kind of cool about picking was once we got there, we'd had breakfast, somewhere between maybe 9 and 10 o'clock, my grandfather would have built a little fire in the middle of one of the rows, and ourselves and many of the other workers would warm tacos on this fire. So you could have some water, you could have warm tacos. That was kind of your break, little food break. There was usually music, somebody was playing on a radio. So it wasn't work. It was like something you went and did. I was with my cousins, I was with my grandfather. By the end of the summer, I knew most of the crew's names. They knew my name. And it was interesting because I hardly ever got called Philip. It was always Felipe. And so those are really vivid memories of what, again, I never really considered it work. It was, we're going with Grandpa, and yes, we're gonna go pick. And it was you're gonna go pick, not you're gonna go work. And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but back to the bag of oranges, we would come home, usually have something to eat, clean up, and then my grandpa would usually take a nap in the afternoon, and then after that nap, we would go to one of his compadres, one of the homes of maybe one of the other workers, or one of our cousins that lived there locally, and that bag of oranges would be given to whomever we were visiting. It's one of the practices I learned that, my grandfather, they said, if you're gonna go see somebody, never go visit empty-handed. Always take something. Okay, so here we were, we had the oranges and we were taking. So I see that now as how, having gone through college and having understood how ethnic conclaves develop, people group together when they've migrated and so forth, and a lot of times a person will go and then another relative will follow, and then perhaps a compadre or another individual will follow with them, and so collectively you start to have a relationship with relatives and an extended family, that creating what they call sociological term an ethnic enclave, a barrio, or in some cases a ghetto. And so maybe we would go and they had just killed a goat and they were, roasting and making birria. So we would come home with maybe 2 pounds of birria and they would get the oranges. Or we would go over to our cousins who were picking peaches, and they have a lug of peaches, and that oranges would exchange into peaches. And if it was peaches, then that means that my Grandma Mercy was gonna can them. So that means that we were going to be, cooking peaches, peeling peaches, canning them, and they were going to go into the cellar or into the pantry of our grandparents. So again, it wasn't work. It was we're doing this process, and we have fresh food. There's an abundance of food. There's a celebration around it. There's an enjoyment of the sharing of the food. So the concept of mutual aid while I saw it and I practiced it, I didn't know that's what it was. And then later on, as I started teaching in Chicano studies, I realized, oh, okay, what I was doing growing up and what my grandfather was teaching us or modeling for us was this mutual aid. So for me, it was this learning process that was taking place that was obviously very unique. And then when I would go after summer vacation and go back to school, I really thought, and again, up until high school, I really thought everybody kind of went away and worked at their grandparents or, did something like that. So my awakening to that was a summer that my freshman year in high school, again, I was working with my grandfather. We were picking and so forth, and I had gotten a job. Because of the excessive amount of heat, we weren't picking a lot. So he says, "Why don't you go work at the warehouse at the packing house?" And so me and my cousin Beverly decided, okay, we'll go work at the packing house because it was going to be an 8-hour shift. We would, have a job. We would still be able to come home in the afternoon and do things. And so that's where I got an opportunity to kind of lift boxes and what they called swamping. And you're putting a loaded box onto a truck, and didn't realize that I was doing weightlifting. So fast forward to wanting to go out for freshman football. I had missed summer school where they did all the weight training, where the coaches become familiar with who's going to be on the freshman football team and so forth. And I remember coming, and I had to go to the night practices because the summer school was over, so all they had was night practices and weightlifting and running. And a lot of the college students from the local university, University of Laverne, also went to that. So here I was, this scrawny little 125-pound guy, and most of the people around me were college athletes who were basically taking advantage of this night training that was going on. And I recall going to the weightlifting circuit, and of course the coaches didn't know who I was, and I lifted up over my body weight, which was unusual for freshmen. And the coach says, "Well, why weren't you in summer school?" And I said just because I was, picking oranges. Picking oranges, and I said, "Yeah, I was in, Strathmore." Of course, he doesn't know where Strathmore is, and I tried to explain it's next to Porterville. He doesn't know where Porterville is, and I said, "Well, it's north of Bakersfield." Okay, then he got the clue that I wasn't in the LA area, and I'll never forget that he goes, "Well, whatever you were doing, it was good because you're lifting more than most of the kids in summer school weightlifting for football or lifting." Oh, okay, I guess that's good. So again, I didn't realize that how what I was doing was developing me, obviously physically, that helped, but it was also giving me a different perspective of what life was about, that there's this other life that my grandparents live and roll in. And it was much different than my parents, who now were, educators, with degrees and working in public education. And, my dad didn't go pick oranges, and my mom didn't go pick oranges. But my mom would tell me about having to make tortillas for the crew when she was younger, when they were living there in Laverne. And I learned, oh, okay, so you had to do this work. And she goes, "Well, it wasn't really work. We just had to make so many tortillas, and we made them in the morning and then went to school." And it was like it was no big deal. That was just what you did. So I began to see that a different perception of what people call perhaps work, and then the attitude about what work is. So as I look at that, and then I look at again, my family here in the Central Valley, my great-grandfather, Juan Valdez, came to the United States. He immigrated here when he was 17. He started coming here. And I say started coming here because the Mexican Revolution was on. And the Mexican Revolution, it starts around 1911, and it actually lasts almost 10 years, a little bit more than 10 years. So he leaves Guadalajara, Mexico, because at that point he had already gone through the equivalent of like a community college education, which was unusual. The family had a small business, so he was afforded the luxury of going to private school, and he became a calligrapher. So he wrote documents for a local newspaper, but because he had a good reputation as a calligrapher, he also wrote documents occasionally for the government of Porfirio Diaz. So during the revolution, if you worked for the government of Porfirio Diaz, you were considered on the wrong side of the revolution. So my grandfather fled because probably his life was in danger because he had done this. So he says, I'm going to go to the United States. So it takes him 2 years to get from Guadalajara to Tijuana. So from 1915 to 1917, he finally gets to the border, crosses the border, and ends up in Biola. Okay, so where we currently live, Biola is 6 miles away, further down Shaw. So just to the west, 6 miles to the west, is where my great-grandfather, Juan Valdez, is going to land, and he's going to get a job there working as an agricultural labor contractor because he's bilingual, because he is literate, because he can do math. He ends up being someone that's invaluable because he speaks 2 languages, he reads and writes, and he is going to translate those skills into becoming, again, this agricultural labor contractor. So he will move from Biola to Sanger, and then doing the same thing, agricultural labor contractor, and then from Sanger he moves to Lindsay. So in Lindsay, California is going to be where he basically has his own business, again, labor contracting. And because he has been doing so well and he's handled his money, he begins buying houses, small houses. We're talking probably 1 bedroom, max 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, probably under 800 square feet. And by the time that I am grown up or, becoming a young man, he has amassed over 20 houses. And so he's collecting rent. He's no longer a labor contractor. He's been able to retire. So seeing my great-grandfather, and never really seeing him work, but always having a 3-piece suit on, driving the latest car, late model car, and happy. So my great-grandfather, who basically mostly only spoke Spanish, he understood and could speak some English, but was way more comfortable in Spanish. So whenever you would greet him, saludar, Grandpa John, yo, ¿cómo estás, Grandpa? Oh, pues listo. His response was always, listo para bailar, which means I'm ready to dance. And at first it's funny, but then years later, when that same response is, oh, mijo, listo para bailar. So it just reflected, again, this attitude toward life that was, enjoyable, that life should be about celebrating, about dancing, about there being, positive kinds of things. So between Grandma Mercy, Grandpa Tutti, Great Grandpa John, I guess one of the things that I saw as I was growing up was I saw happy people. And you saw people that weren't necessarily rich in monetary, standards, but were rich in that they were okay with their domain, with where they were, and the people around them. So growing up and looking back at how we came back to the Central Valley, or came to the Central Valley, because when your mother and I married, we decided, I was going to Long Beach State. We lived in Long Beach, and then from there we moved to Santa Ana because I got a teaching job there. And then 1979, of course, the Proposition 13 passes. Me and I think 69 other teachers in the Santa Ana Unified School District lose our jobs. And I said, I wasn't worried. I said, I can get a job anywhere. And it's going to be okay. I said, why don't we look at moving to the Central Valley? I said, we'll be able to, because I think that at the time we had a home there in Santa Ana in the barrio, and this is where your first home. And I want to say it was maybe 1,000 square feet. I'm not really sure. Your mom might know. But I said, we can sell this house here and we can go buy a house with, maybe 3 or 4 bedrooms and maybe 2 bathrooms. And that was like, okay, well, let's go look. So that's how we end up in Madera, California. That's the house where we moved when you were 2 and your sister was born. And I got a job with Migrant Education as a resource teacher. And it's just interesting that my first assignment was a place called Mendota, California, and Firebaugh, California, where I had worked with my dad and my cousins from Atwater hauling cantaloupes. And it was like, okay, this is really small world, because I've been to these places before, but it was, at a younger age, being exposed to doing farm work. So when you asked me about talking and doing this recording, I definitely wanted to tell the story about a penny a tree, because that was like it happened yesterday. I can remember looking down the hill from where the row started, and then getting all the way down to the bottom, and it got about halfway up, and that's when my grandfather says, okay, I'm done, because I'm not sure what else he had to do there that day, but I think he was just kind of like, I'll give me something to do, and I'll call it a job, and actually pay me a penny a tree. So I wanted to tell that story, because to me that was again something I remember very positively. And then the other story about the picking oranges with my cousins, that was just something that we did together, that my cousin Debbie, who's passed away, we would laugh about that later on in our lives. Oh, you remember, I used to get the ladder, and, I used to get the top stuff, you got the bottom stuff, and you remember the first time they switched us from boxes to bins, how we thought, we're never going to fill that bin. It just seems like this giant box, and how come they took the boxes away? Because the boxes you could fill up with 2 sacks, and there was much more of the immediate kind of gratification of, oh, I got a box filled, right? I earned 50 cents. So and those are positive things, because it was fun, it was enjoyable, and it wasn't work. And so I'm thankful that in the job that I've had, or jobs that I've had in my career, I've never really had a job where I went to and, this is work. I don't want to go today, or, oh, this is hard, or I don't want to do this, or I'm going to say I'm sick. I don't want to go today. And I've never had that. So I'm fortunate. And so I'm glad that you, in your job now, you have that same kind of attitude. Okay, this is something I do. I enjoy doing it, and I'm kind of learning from it. And I had these opportunities to maybe do something different, so that work is something that can be positive. So, okay, I'll stop. Next question.
No, I want to just kind of, I like the, I have a lot of theme dads, so I'm going to kind of go off of some of the things you talked about and say that I think it's cool because there's a lot of stuff that comes full circle, and at the time you don't know that's going to happen. So like you're talking about picking oranges, and me and Elisa ended up at ag schools. My school being one of the biggest citrus colleges, I think, in California, UC Riverside. Lisa ends up at Davis. I end up eventually at Davis too. So, and when I was in DC, I learned just how much of a powerhouse ag schools those are. So being from California, being from the Central Valley, that's very cool. About work, and to me now, I'm good at what I do. I was happy that you said you weren't worried about getting a job, because I'm finally at that point in my career where I'm not worried about where the next job's going to come. I have, but through my opportunities by coming home, I've had a lot of jobs, and very easily been able, like I said, there's lots of opportunity, whether it be jobs, whether it be the arts, whether it be you want to make a business here. There's just a lot of, it's just abundant.
Yes.
And the other thing I was going to say is, you mentioned that the trees going for forever. Well, you didn't mention that at the house in Madera, we had the tree farm. And I think that definitely was because of your upbringing with Grandpa Tutti. I don't think you would have planted, I don't know however many trees we had at the house, but there was a lot. And some days those rows seemed really long, some days they didn't. And then the last thing you touched on was that you started in Mendota. Well, now we have, my brother-in-law goes to Mendota every day and helps, again, with ag.
Yeah.
So it's just this whole, how everything is connected. And you mentioned spending time with others. Just yesterday, I was asked out, this is, for a point in reference, this is a Super Bowl weekend. We had a Super Bowl potluck, and someone goes, "Rena, isn't your team the Raiders?" And I thought, I don't remember telling anyone that, but well, if I had to pick a team from my childhood, yes, I would pick the Raiders. The Raiders are not in the Super Bowl this year, but that's beside the point. So I said, fun fact, when I was a kid, I didn't know it was different that you always hosted, you and Mom always hosted in Madera at dinner parties. Mm-hmm. I remember Keith Moody and Kathy coming over for dinner. Keith was on the Raiders, and I just thought that was the most starstruck I ever got, I think, at having someone over to the house, Dad. I thought, oh, this is so cool. And then I also recalled to my colleagues, well, my dad, he had 2 girls, but he tried as best as he could to raise us as boys. And we went to the Raiders training camp in Oxnard and got the autographs and took pictures with all these Raiders. And it was funny because at work they were like, whoa. And I said, yeah, I bet you never expected me to come at you with all of that information. So that was nice. And I do have fond memories of the dinner parties at the house. And I'm just going to kind of throw this in here too, because I think you at one point did mention, mentioned about Great Grandpa John being ready to dance. Well, I will say when you hosted those dinner parties, they were wonderful because me and Elisa, you know, we would do dances, you know, we would make up our dances and entertain everybody and be practicing for whatever. We'd hand out menus, I remember that. But what I most vividly remember was the reel-to-reel.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew every time that reel-to-reel started going that we were gonna have a dinner party. So have very fond memories of Madera, of the house, of just growing up, and it was fun. Obviously, at 17, I was ready to leave, and then later in life got pulled back.
Yeah.
But thank you.
You're welcome. You know, that's funny because when I was working in migrant education, I was originally assigned to the Mendota school district, which was 8th grade, because they didn't have a high school there. The high school was located a few miles away in a different little town called Tranquility. So most of the Mendota kids went to Tranquility. And then I was assigned to Firebaugh, but I was only assigned to the elementary schools. There was another person that had the high school and the junior high. So within a year, the superintendent made it clear that he goes, I want, you know, Mr. Gonzalez to work at all of the schools, so there's some continuity in the program. So eventually, I get the junior high and the high school. So I became very familiar with the high school staff because I had worked at Santa Ana Valley High School, and so I made good friends with the wrestling coach. And it's really interesting because just on the news today was Bill Magnuson, who is the head coach of football at Firebaugh High School. And I recall when I got the job working at Firebaugh High School, I was offered the job of being head counselor there. And went through a number of unique experiences with that, but at the time, the football coach that had been there left for another job, and we needed to hire somebody that could teach wood shop, or there were several openings, but we needed to definitely find a football coach out of one of the spots that we had to fill. I think we needed a math teacher and a science teacher and an ag teacher and a woodshop teacher. And Mr. Magnuson, who was from Claremont, California, which was adjacent to Laverne, California, and they were our rivals when we were in high school. So I remember when this candidate came through and he says, "Oh yeah, I went to Claremont." And I said, "Oh, well, I went to Bonita." And he goes, "Oh." And he goes, "Well, did you wrestle?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I told him, you know, how I did in wrestling. Oh my gosh, he was in, you know, like celebration mode. And, oh, you know, you won that championship and you did this and you did that. And so we became friends very quickly. So I was part of the staff, the administrative staff that hired Bill Magnuson. And Bill Magnuson coached Josh Allen. So your mother and I were laughing about that. I said, you know, I should go get on the news and say, well, I hired him. So back to Firebaugh High School, I'm the counselor there and trying to do things so that students will see they have opportunities as they're going through high school, including college, including the armed forces, and just showing them they have options, that they don't have to just do field work, because many of the people there their parents were the field workers. And I'll never forget, and I very vividly, that a very young African-American man was talking to our principal in the office, and I'm going, I wonder who that is. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he's a salesman or something like that. And then Mr. Dern, principal, calls me and said, I'd like you to meet, you know, Keith Moody, and meet him. And he says he has an interesting counseling program that he wants to implement here. And I said, oh, that's great. We'll get you an office. I'll get you an office, and we'll set you up here. And right away, Keith goes, hold on a minute. I'm only going to be coming every other week. And I said, how can you counsel every other week? And so then he tells me that this is a program called Goals for Youth, and he's going to be working at a couple of different schools, and that our days are going to be, I said, well, you can't come every other week. You need to come at least once a week. I said, lots of kids here need to see someone like you that, is a professional athlete and now is in education. I said, they need to see you as a role model. And so he's kind of taken aback because it's like I think he thought I was just trying to hire him and get him to work with us. And so that's how I saw him. I said, "Wow, great, another counselor. Let's get him, right?" So we became very good friends. And of course, I didn't know he had been on the Super Bowl team of the Raiders at the time. He didn't wear his Super Bowl ring that day. All I knew was he was going to be paid for by the NFL and not Firebaugh, so he wasn't going to impact the budget, that he was going to help be a model for a lot of kids who needed to see models. And so that's how I said, that's how I see you. I see you as, you're another counselor in my opinion. Well, he goes, well, I really have a counseling credential. I said, we don't have to really tell anybody that. We're going to call you the Goals for Youth counselor, all right? And he felt pretty comfortable with that. So the relationship that we developed was pretty unique. I'm very thankful. We would, again, be friends outside of work, which was kind of fun. And again, I forgot that we had him, and then he brought some of his other Buffalo Bill friends, the people that had played on the Buffalo Bills, over for some of those parties that you were talking about, and were very, very enjoyable. So it would be a little bit later on, maybe later in the year, as we were kind of winding the year down, that Keith says, I need to share something with you. I need to tell you something. And I'm thinking, wow, he got really serious all of a sudden. He goes, you were the first Mexican I ever met that had a college degree. And I just looked at him, I go, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, none of the guys on the team, were Mexican American. I went to Syracuse. I was from upstate New York, and I didn't know what a Mexican or Mexican American was. I didn't know anybody. And then when I got introduced to you, and when I was going to be working at Firebaugh High School, and they told me the population, I was a little apprehensive about how am I going to be received? How am I going to relate to these kids? And then when you said right away that you wanted me once every 2 weeks wasn't going to work, that you insisted I be there at least once a week, that you told me that the kids needed to see me as a role model, and he goes, you don't know how much stress and that took off of me, and relief it was for me that these kids were just going to accept me. And I'm thinking to myself, I said, dude, you have a Super Bowl ring. It's like, I'm thinking to myself, I said, no. I said, these kids need to see models. They need to see people that, have accomplished things. And he goes, yeah, but he goes, I didn't know that. And he goes, and you took all the I guess the stress and anxiety that I had about, coming out here into this rural area that I really knew nothing about, and you were very welcoming. So I wonder how Keith and Kathy are doing. Your mom and I, every once in a while, will say, God, I wonder what Keith's doing nowadays. So that's funny that you brought that up, because that was a really positive thing, that the kids that got to go to Oxnard with us, it was like they couldn't believe it. Like, we're going to get to go? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm going too. My wife and kids are going, and I said, it should be fun. I said, I've never been, so I don't know either. Oh, you mean you haven't been to there? I said, no, how would I go to the Raiders camp? I just met, Mr. Moody too. So, so Keith was a very, very unique, again, positive aspect about the place that I worked, where, again, I didn't see it as work. Fireball High was hard place for me to leave. When I think about how, had I not left there, I may not have ended up at Sierra High School, because I don't know that I would have wanted to transition out of that. But it had to do with opportunity, it had to do with the situation of growing as a professional and so forth. So you now see how the value of a college education, and it's not just the degree, it's what it does for you in terms of presenting you with opportunities and allowing you to basically, be able to be there should an opportunity present itself. So both you and your sister have, I think, been able to see that, and that's a positive thing to see as a parent. And I know both your mother and I have discussed, the fact that it's good to be able to see that your offspring have been able to, because of their education, mostly take advantage of opportunities that have been presented in your lives and so forth. So, yeah, and I laugh now when I think about Foti going to Mendota. Foti is our son-in-law who happens to work for Stimoli's, which is a very large farming organization in Mendota, and it's again a small world, because he is working, or some of my former students from Firebaugh work with him. And when that revelation came about, that was even another kind of funny story, because he goes, "Oh, you had so and so as a student?" I go, "Yeah, I remember Robert." I said, Foti, I knew the whole family. When you went to Firebaugh, you couldn't not know the whole family if you counseled anybody. And so he goes, "Well, do you know Robert?" "Yeah, I remember Robert." And I said, "Yeah, his sister Diane." And he goes, "Oh." So he gets him on the phone. He goes, "Oh, so a phone conversation takes place. So Robert can't believe that he's talking to me." And he goes, "I can't believe, you're related to, my boss." And so, yeah, small world sometimes. So good stuff.
All right. I think we're good. I think that's, unless you wanted to share anything else, Dad.
I could probably go more, but where are we with time?
I think we have maybe 5-10 more minutes.
Okay. Do you want to add anything?
No, I just want you to tell the Birdie McTweet story and how you got here.
We were notified that as working in Santa Ana Unified, I was working at the junior high school. I was coaching at the high school. Proposition 13 passes, I want to say in March or so, and the district realizes that they are not going to be able to continue with the staffing because of the changing now in the tax funding of the district in Santa Ana Unified. So they begin the proceeding of laying off 70 teachers, I being one of them, having been hired in the last few years. So when that happened, I happened to be at a nursery. I don't know what I was buying there or something. Had a conversation with the owner of the nursery, and he said, "Oh, would you like to work here?" Because he knew that I was knowledgeable in plants and had worked for a landscaper and so forth. And I said, "Sure, I could use a part-time job after school, and could make a little bit of money until, maybe in case." So if things don't work out, at least I'll have something to fall back on, right? So a short time later, I had worked there for a few weeks, and he said, I know this guy that has greenhouses, and I think he's looking for a manager of the greenhouses. And I said, "Well, I have a full-time job, but I still teach." He goes, No, you can do this. You can do this like you do here. You could come and do it a few hours, maybe a day, or every day during the week. And then I said, well, okay, well, how much does it pay? He goes, he'll pay you more than we pay you here. And that he just kind of left it at that. So I go and interview with the guy, not knowing that his name was Richard Moriarty, and I didn't know that his parents owned and built South Coast Plaza in Costa Mesa. So they were very wealthy. Of course, I don't know any of this. All I know is he wants somebody to manage the greenhouses, show me what to do. I think I can do it. So this guy was very much an entrepreneur. He did a lot of different things, and I had no idea how wealthy he was. I probably should have had an idea, because about the third week working for him, he drove a Porsche, but there was another Porsche in the driveway, and he goes, oh, I just bought this for, I don't know, I want to say like $24,000. And he goes, I want you to detail it. Okay, so I didn't know exactly what that meant. He goes, clean it, pull the seats back, clean everything, redo the leather on the seats, and soften them up, and shampoo the rugs. And then he goes, and wax it, and I want you to wax it 3 times. And I'm going, okay, like, what do you mean wax it 3 times? He goes, wax it, buff it out, wax it again, buff it out, wax it, buff it out, 3 times. So I'm thinking, okay, I had never done that before. I said, okay, 3 times, whatever. I couldn't believe how shiny the car got. And he goes, good. He goes, somebody's coming over to look at it tomorrow. I'm going to sell it for $36,000. And he didn't have the car a month, and I watched him make $12,000, and he paid me, I think, $200 for my detailing, which I thought was, I was making $400 a month teaching. So $200 was like, okay, this is a good job. The guy at the nursery really is a friend of mine for turning me on to this. So a little bit later, we would often landscape the insides of buildings, because he had a lot of big, beautiful plants that would go into an office building in the corner, and it would be the one that would be 3 feet tall, or 7 feet tall, or 6 feet tall. And that's what the greenhouse, one of the greenhouses had basically just those kinds of plants in it. And he says, I got a job. We're going to go do a place in Fresno, California. I said, oh, my cousin lives in Fresno. He goes, okay, good, you're driving. We're going on such and such a day. And he goes, I don't want to spend the night, so you're going to have to drive up and back, because I don't want to drive for, I said, okay, no problem. So I remember coming home and saying, we're going to go to do this job in Fresno, and so, we're going to leave early Saturday morning, be back late Saturday night, and your mother saying, oh, no, what are you doing in Fresno? I said, I don't know, we're doing like a disco place. And a disco place, I don't know. Richard says, let's go, pick out the plants, blah, blah, blah. And so we get to this place. It's called Bertie McTweet's. It's over here on R Street. The building is still there. And the inside is, again, this old brick building that has been kind of renovated. And there's the disco ball, and there's the sound system. And we brought in all the plants. And he goes, okay, well, where do we go eat? And I said, oh, I know where we can go eat. So we ended up going to eat over at a place called Kuka's, which is over on F Street. And he goes, is it safe there? I go, yeah, we're fine. So I remember we got a couple of burritos, and then, drove back home. I drove back home. And he was just fascinated that he goes, wow, you just drove there. You knew where to go in the downtown, and you knew of a place to eat. He goes, all right. And he was just happy, because I think of that, about we weren't eating at a fast food place. He didn't like fast food places. And yeah, Bertie McTweet. So it's funny that you remember that, because I remember it as a whole different thing, because I think he gave me $100 again for that trip, just for going for that day. And so again, I was making about $400 a month, and every once in a while when we did something like this, he would just peel off 100 or a couple hundred, And it was no big deal. That's when I began to have a clue about, okay, he's pretty well off, but he's working. He's doing all these different hustles. And so I learned from Richard too, and he was fun to be around. It seemed like he never took anything seriously, but he was always making a joke out of something. And so, again, a happy person.
Yeah, I see how you became the hard worker that you are, and I've been told I'm my father's daughter because I kind of don't rest as much as I should probably. And now you're looking at, you just retired from Fresno State, which was not your job. You just enjoyed teaching. So what are you going to do now? And this will be the last question. What are you doing now?
That's easy. I've been every day I try to do at least 30 minutes of learning Greek, and I've been trying to do at least 30 minutes of playing the guitars and trying to learn a different song. So those two things are enough. I work with a nonprofit organization called Binational of California, and I'm on the board with them. And I also am on the board with the Cheech Marin Museum in Riverside. So I have enough to do in terms of keeping me active and connected because of trying to be a responsible board member. Binational is still a growing organization, and we do different activities. So I'm working with a much younger board and staff. So I'm the old person with, I guess, a little bit more experience, and just trying to be a mentor in that aspect, and very much being thankful to be on the Cheech board, because this is going to be just a really great learning experience, as well as a really fun responsibility about being a good board member there, and watching and it develop further and being even more than it is right now. So not worried about filling my time. Your mother and I have some travel plans, and we discuss those regularly. We're taking a week off next week, going to Southern California for a week. So
all right.
Always stuff to do. You're welcome, Miha. Thank you for arranging this.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Hamilton, and I am a member of CMAC's board. If my memory's correct, I was recruited to this board in October of 2010. In October of 2010, these folks reached out to me I'd never heard of in my life. I was peacefully working my job as chief at the local community health center, and somebody who knew me said, "Hey, you should really check out these guys. They're interested in having you be on their board at this place called the Community Media Access Center, and it's all about PEG." And I'm like, I don't know anybody named PEG, but okay, I'll come down and check it out. So I came down to this building I'm sitting in right now, and we were in the basement of the old museum in this concrete box, it felt like, and here's these 10, 11 guys, including Jerry and Don and a few others, most of whom sadly are not on the board today, or not around at all, and have moved away or whatever. And I asked them, they were all in production stuff. They all had been in this business their whole lives. And I asked them why I was there and why did they think I would be a good board member? And they said, well, because you're the only one who doesn't have any experience, and we need somebody who can sort of stand outside these conversations and give us your best guess on what might be best, and just advise us in that respect. And I reminded them again that I did not, and by the way, still do not really know much about how media works, how television works, how the camera that's in front of me works, and how the whole thing gets put together. But I have to tell you, it's been one of the most fun and interesting and rewarding things I think I've ever done in my life. This asset that I was lucky enough to be part of is incredible. It brings an opportunity to young people, old people, everyone. It's completely democratic here in Fresno, who wants to tell their stories and have those stories written down and available to others, or just themselves and their families, forever, essentially. Gives them the tools to do that, and does it in such a way that is equally available to everybody, regardless of where they come from, how much money they make, and what their base knowledge is before they walk in the door. I've spent a lot of my life traveling to different cities, looking at different models in the healthcare arena, and now I've had the chance to look at different cities through the lens of this particular asset, these studios, this thing called CMAC. And I've come to realize that we are so lucky here, not only to have it, because there's a number of them around, but to have the people who are here working at it, building it every day, better and better and better, who are so committed to it and put in so much time and effort and their whole hearts. We're just lucky, because I can tell you right now, it's not like that everywhere. And this asset is certainly not available everywhere. And the difference for this community, I think, has been dramatic. And there are areas that we could point to where that has shown, but I won't dive into that. I'll let others go into that level of detail. But the great thing about it is it also creates that opportunity for influence and access to information for community residents that they might never, in fact, probably would never have had. So going back to that concrete box that day, I agreed to go ahead and be part of this board. I found out how the money went, what the plan was, and how they were going to take this old building around us here, which I had been part of when it was a museum, and really felt originally a little annoyed that they would be taking over this asset that I thought should be turned back into a museum. And that has completely flipped, and I think this building, while it's been many things, could never be anything better than it is right now, period. So as we move forward, the next thing I know is we're going to build this thing up into what has become a major studio in this part of the state today. And I was asked to be the chairman of that board because I had supervised the building of a number of clinic facilities. And for most people, they didn't have, that kind of background and that kind of skill. So once again, it was my honor to watch the construction, to look over the plans with a core member group of the board, to make the kinds of decisions that were needed at that time, to use what we had as far as financially and what we needed as carefully as possible, because we were always very thin in that direction, and get the best everything that we could out of that. And I think, again, it was one of the greatest days ever in April of 2012 when we were able to pull back the curtain and have the grand opening in this place. And it was hugely attended by all the glitterati of Fresno, who annoy me so much, so often. But they came and they looked, and they were properly awed by the whole thing. And from there, it's just been one decision after another, and a lot of great leadership, first from Jerry, who was, of course, a board member originally, sacrificed his place on the board to be the executive director after spending a good part of his life working very hard in this industry, and he should have retired. But instead of doing that, he committed the next 5 years of his life to this thing, this amazing thing that is CMAC. Jerry is one of the funniest people you'll ever know. He always had a crack on everything that you might say, and he brought a lot of laughter to every conversation we ever had. And as chair, I was lucky enough to get to sit down with him a couple of times every year and just talk about what the future held in his mind for CMAC. And what I see today looks just like the future that he envisioned at that time. So I'll always remember Jerry as a mover and shaker in this community who, right from the beginning, back in the early aughts, spent time, energy, and political credits to get this city and the city of Clovis to be able to put the money from the PEG fund into a bank account under the name of CMAC and build that pot of money and guard it, because make no difference, once you build up a couple of $1 million in the city bank accounts, everybody down there wants to take it back. But he and Don and a few others successfully fought that off. And so by the time we were ready to spend it and do that build out, it was here. And if you think it wasn't a major production to turn this room, which at one point was the dinosaur area where there were big dinosaurs sitting here, rising up above the grid above us here, the steel sets and light holders, hangers, whatever. Man, I got to tell you, that was something. And this room, this place was completely transformed into what it is today. And it took almost 2 years, but it happened. So, you know, flash forward, 2015, we needed more room. It was so great to see our membership grow. I think our first membership list was 12 people long. By then, we were in the hundreds, and we needed to grow. And so came about the second floor, which was made to be just a conference room and an editing bay. And it's so much more than that right now. And as CMAC has grown, so the community's needs and dependence on CMAC to be able to continue telling those stories and having that avenue to get those stories recorded and get them out there in the way that is useful to them. And I make sure to watch the channels at least once a week to see what's happening, see what's new. This team here is just one of the best, and I am constantly awed by them. So, sort of in closing, I have to say, again, that you are all lucky to have this kind of asset in your community. I hope it will live on forever. I see no reason why it can't. The amazing stories that come out of here never cease to just blow me away, and I learn so much from them. And I am working with a group of board members who are just as committed to excellence and to this place. And it continues to be one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Thank you very much.
So CMAC Oral History Day. My name is Kendra Helen Andrea Lopez, and my mother, Lydia, named me Kendra from a contestant on The Price is Right back in 1988 when she was pregnant. I love to share this story because it definitely doesn't sound typical of a Latina. So it definitely has its uniqueness. Why she gave me 2 middle names was just added to the idea of, I guess, being unique in itself. I don't personally use my 2 middle names, but it is a fun story to share. I was born here in Fresno, California, down the street at Community Hospital. I grew up on the east side of Fresno, and when I say the east side of Fresno, it wasn't just one certain house. I grew up in a lot of different areas throughout the East Side. Much of my early life was always on the run. The title for this conversation, as I really wanted to focus on what I wanted to share within my own history, is how life on the run has started and where it is now and how I am here today. So I'll circle back to that. But basically, I grew up around the east side of Fresno, and I went to a couple of different elementary schools. I also went to a couple of middle schools, as well as I went to high school, primarily at Roosevelt High School, but I also spent a year in the state of Texas. I liked Roosevelt specifically because it was definitely a unique and diverse opportunity for myself to really gain the confidence that I needed in my life. I struggled with my family moving around in a lot of ways that we were at times homeless. We stayed with family members. We escaped an abusive father, an abusive stepfather. We've stayed at the Margie Mason Center. So what I really liked about high school specifically is that while all that chaos was going through, I basically held on to the energy of being active in school, and I really got to connect with a little bit of sports, but more so leadership roles in high school, such as being the class president and being a part of different clubs. So school really taught me how to be optimistic, to have good grades, to still put a smile on my face when on the outside my life was running in chaos, basically. The stories that have been passed down from my family, I can't really go back into detail in terms of history being recorded because I grew up in a single parent household. I basically only knew my mother's side. My mother has a lot of sisters and one brother, and what fascinated me the most about my mother is that she grew up when the Cesar Chavez movement was going on, and she grew up in the farm camps, moving around from location to location, running away from the Teamsters. And that really touches me because I know that even though I can't directly pinpoint exactly what part of Mexico or what part of Texas our family is originated from, I truly understand that because of their own struggles that they basically had to mold into just surviving. So I really do appreciate the idea of being able to mold, but also have that patience and hope and make the choices that are important to protect your family, to want better, and really keep going. So that is the story specifically from my mom's side of struggle and still standing. In terms of my father's side, briefly, when I had the opportunity to meet him later in my 20s, it was what I recognize now, the idea of having a father or a person who dealt heavily with alcohol and being distant, and as an adult understanding that mental health and trauma from the Army and just things of such play a role in why sometimes parents are absent in their children's lives. So I've made terms with that part of myself. I obviously would have liked to know his favorite color, his favorite food, but unfortunately at the time I had the opportunity to meet him, he was already passing with cancer. So I take that situation in my 20s when it happened, that life really is meant to be understood with perspective, and within our own family, if it's not as organized and there's not a lot of history being taken, to ask those questions before it's too late. So let's see, to the next question. What's the most important, significant thing that you've done? So the most important and significant thing is that I have broken a tradition, a way of coping. I have built the confidence to share. I have left a life of drinking heavily with alcohol, and I approach 5 years next month. And this idea of having it a part of my life, not only from my father, not only from my mother, but as early as my teens, whether it was going cruising on Kings Canyon with my cousins, or if it was in college when I was definitely part of a much more faster life than I was ready for. Or it was in my 20s when I moved to a big city, or it was the way that I dealt with work stress or life stress or dating stress. I'm so proud that I've been able to listen to that little voice and really share with others and feel comfortable, and just have that forgiveness within myself and that grace that you don't have to put yourself in this corner, and how you break society's idea of how you should be dealing with life is power. I have had such an amazing life filled with experiences, friendships, and one thing that has really centered me back, that is most important, is how I see the run. And although, running is something that is accomplished, like let's say a marathon or 5K or a 10K with this trophy, instead I think it is the time and dedication and the patience you have to be with yourself in that constant state. It's been my greatest joy to bring running here to Fresno, to add to the conversation, to add to the space, to say, hey, I grew up on the east side of Fresno. How do we get people to cross over Huntington? How do we share locally what we have here and use running for people to find community, to have it when they're stressed out, to just be a space, a safe space that you're not going to other things to deal with your stress. I feel like that on the run in itself has been the biggest really spark I've been able to highlight within myself and sharing my personal story. I have had the privilege of running 33 full marathons, completing a 100-miler, and everything in between. I asked myself, like, when is running enough? Haven't you ran enough in your life? Haven't you experienced what you've needed to experience? What is it that you seek? And I tell people it's the time that I have with myself to be in this space. Yes, it's sometimes painful. It's you have these highs and these lows, but it's definitely a way for myself to give back to my health, my wellness, the idea that I get to see another day, that I'm healthy enough to show up, to listen to my body, and to really just continue to push the limits of the unknowns in a healthy way. So that's really what excites me and brings me back to this idea of what is next. So moving forward, how is the world different now versus when you were a child? Well, the world is so instant now, and the pressures of being in spaces, whether socially or just within yourself, I feel like the whole identity part, there's a big lack there, and it is confusing. There's so much information that I understand why people kind of pivot and change as children and the struggles that they have. I do feel like the world is a little more harsh. I don't see a lot more of the common courtesy or the being a good neighbor. Within the schooling system, I feel like there is a lot more technology in it, and sometimes it's great, but it's not always attention-wise the best. I would hope that there's more arts and crafts and sports within the school system. I don't see kids really being inspired to do sports or to run. Like, my vision is to see youth running around and enjoying like the environments around here. But unfortunately, I see more of the technology distraction. And it's created a sense of that's all you need sometimes is a phone instead of community and energy. So that's what's changed, in my opinion, that I've noticed within my own nephew or nieces and nephews who are younger. Have you ever been married, and how did you meet your partner? So I've never been married. I've never been engaged. And on that note, I don't have children. And being a 36-year-old woman who gets questioned often about these decisions, I don't struggle with it as much anymore, but I would say that I am so happy with the life and experiences that I have had that if I were to go tomorrow, I'd be okay. I have learned that community and friendships and even just your passions can really fulfill that void. And I do believe in happily ever after, but I also recognize that solitude has been something that if you seek and you can find, it is just as important. So the next question is, how did you decide on your career? So I actually would say that my career base has been mainly retail. When I was 22, I dropped out of Fresno State. I was a fashion merchandising major, and I was dealing with depression. And I told myself, if I don't leave Fresno, I don't know what's going to happen to me. So I used the last of my financial aid, took out expensive school loans, and I went to fashion school in downtown LA. I definitely worked in the industry. It was exciting, but it was also a bit overwhelming. Fashion has always been a passion of mine, but then I realized the whole retail space just felt very, very overwhelming. And then I was able to branch into marketing and some brand ambassador work, whether some gigs, whether it was like cleaning homes or dog sitting, you name it. Today I am back in the marketing. Today I'm actually back in the retail side of working. And I would say that I have a lot more control over being flexible in my schedule. So retail has been a way that I've been able to basically survive for the time being. The next question is, what person had the most positive influence on your life? The person that has had the most positive influence in my life would probably be my mother. As I've gotten older, I recognize that you see your parents differently. And at the time when I was young and I didn't understand why she made decisions or why we moved around, or I would remember thinking to myself, gosh, why can't my mom just be smarter like the other moms? Or why can't my mom, have a working car? Or why can't my mom come to my game? Or why can't my mom just have a voice? And I've recognized on a larger level that my mom, just like any parents, also have had their traumas. And it wasn't necessarily that they were not able to be like the others. They were basically just trying to do the best that they can. And today, I really recognize that sometimes the tools that our family members have, that's all the tools that they have had. And I'm so happy that she did what she had to do, that she protected us. She kept us fed. A lot of things on the outside looking in seemed very chaotic, but she always was there, and she always understood and showed love in whatever way that she could. When I think about the sacrifices she's had to make and being a single parent and making the decisions, at the time I may not have understood, but now I get it. I have dealt a lot with alcohol abuse. I questioned life. I would cry to her. I would tell her, I just don't know what's wrong with me, whether it was depression. On the outside looking in, it's like, oh, you're so vibrant and full of life and you're so busy, but it was in those most dark moments that I knew that my mom would always be there. And till this day, she's my #1 supporter, and I can't express how happy I am just to be able to be here, to have the time to be able to spend, and to have this new adult identity with a parent instead of having more of the child where I didn't understand. So that definitely reminds me that in life, people are always going through things, and how you show up and how you can be compassionate and helpful, just really speaks on how you were raised, or maybe your morals and your beliefs, and that really pushes me through to show up for myself, but also for others. Let's see. The next question is, what is something that had a big impact on how you live your life? The biggest thing that has an impact, I would say, lately, within the last maybe 10 years, would be the power of social media and how it's molded opportunities and identity, as well as just being authentic and finding your voice. So I have never physically been to therapy. I have sat in AA, walked out, and I was like, this isn't for me. This is too heavy. I have had my moments of chaos where I was like, oh my gosh, I was blocked out. I can't believe I posted that. I've had my moments of seeing technology really affect people's lives for the good and the bad. But as I really come back to how it's run parallel throughout my life, it was always initially there for the idea to share my creative perspective of photos, whether I was on a run in a pocket in LA, whether it was like Echo Park, or we ran to USC or Koreatown. It was a way that I was able to share my perspective, to storytell a little bit in the caption, to capture moments. As that kind of phased out, where I was able to be a little more interactive with personality, video, I recognize that people want connections, and if we can show up and be our authentic self in whatever stage we are at that time, that it really echoes louder. And you never know the message that you're sharing and how it's affecting other people who need to hear that, to say, hey, I see her, I feel her, I am her, I get it, I don't need to be ashamed. There's hope. When that happens within this space, it's definitely a much more bigger impact than what it could be used for if it were not used properly, right? So I've been very happy with the connections that I've been able to form with just releasing and finding that creative way through media, and how it's given me the courage to say out loud, to deal with my truths, to form communities, to go for opportunities that I could only find online within running or branding, and really use and take a step back of what this world is, and this is how we're finding information today and being inspired through community.
Hi, my name is Jazz, and today I'm here with Sue Miguel at the Oral History Day project. How are you doing, Sue?
Doing okay.
That's good. So from when we were previously talking, you said you had a military background.
Well, my husband was in the military. I have a strong family history in the military. And then when we got married, I started volunteering in the family programs for the military. And then I actually went to work. as a job. So, yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
So what was your full-time job on top of the military programming?
Well, eventually it became the full-time job. I was a DoD contractor. So that I was actually paid to do that after volunteering for so many years.
Okay. How was it like volunteering at the DoD, or as a DoD?
I love taking care of families.
Okay.
The families go through a lot, you know, when their soldiers are deploying or they're going on their annual trainings, things like that. So there was a lot of different things happening, especially during deployment.
Okay. You said your husband was in the military. Did you ever have to deal with deployment?
He was stationed in Germany when he was young. Not a deployment, but you know, that was just where he was stationed for so many years. Deployment, when it came up, he was National Guard and the Pentagon didn't know what to do yet. So they called everybody up. They sent them up to Fort Lewis in Washington to wait until the Pentagon decided, okay, we're placing them here and here. And being 9/11, things happening on our own ground, so they were sent to guard like the Golden Gate Bridge, some ammo places that we have around the country, power plants, things like that, to guard things that
Are explosive in nature?
unfortunately may have been a target. So that was, you know, they were still deployed, still away from their families. So it was an in-country deployment.
How did you feel about that? I know you were dealing with kids back home.
Yeah. My youngest, he got called up. In fact, I got my call first that he was being called up, doing what I was doing. So I was prepared to deal with families. But our youngest was not a year old yet. She was born in 2000, in October. So we were worried he wouldn't be home for her first birthday. And of course I had 3 boys at home as well. So it was a lot, but that's what you do. You do what you have to do.
Yeah. How was it like raising the 4 boys as a family? Or like 3 boys as a family?
As if the boys?
Yeah.
The boys were easy. Girls, not so much. But no, all 3 of the boys were pretty good throughout the deployment. They were all interested in the military and, you know, the vehicles, and they got to go do some really cool things over at like Camp Roberts and go through live fires and ride in tanks and all kinds of fun things like that.
Have any of your kids joined the military?
No. And I honestly thought that Casey, who is the second in line, I thought he would end up in the military because he would have been a very good military candidate. But unfortunately, when my husband was injured underneath a vehicle, so that started a whole new process. Eventually he got out of the military, you know, as a disabled veteran. So then college was paid for here if you were a California resident stationed in California. So even if you had a 1% disability rating, your children could go to California state and community colleges for free.
Okay.
So he didn't have to go in the military to pay for his college.
Must be nice.
Yeah, you know from experience.
Yeah, with 20K of debt.
Yeah. Well, we actually got Casey through college with not a single loan.
That's good.
So that was a big blessing for him. But of course, Jerry was injured for life with his back, so he could never work again. But, you know, there are some things that the military provided outside of that. So.
Does he still do like strenuous activities?
No.
Okay.
His back injury, he's had back surgery. They want to do surgery again, and he is not wanting surgery again because of scar tissue buildup, things like that. So, no, but we do still volunteer. We volunteer and work what they call the stand down event in Fresno once a year, where homeless veterans are given the opportunity to stay on the grounds. We feed them 3 meals a day, which is what Jerry and I do. We do the kitchen. He's in charge of the kitchen, so the meal planning, cooking, and then we also have clothes for them. They get haircuts. We have all the different vendors there that can help them with issues, including the court system.
Okay.
They come out, the court system does. If they have anything that needs to be taken care of, they can do it right there. A lot of homeless veterans don't either have the opportunity or just don't go do what they need to do, unfortunately.
That's really good that you're able to help them through the process and that program's there for them.
It's kind of like continuing on from family assistance when I worked with the military, because Jerry was always involved with me too. So he may have worked there full time, but he also volunteered a lot. So still providing. I still get calls, even though I've been out of it for so many years. I still get calls from some of the veterans that I dealt with back then. And I'm still friends with some of them.
Nice. It's very nice to keep in contact with that.
Yeah, and social media really helps with that, of course.
Yeah, especially today versus 30 years ago. Definitely it's a big help with connecting with people.
Yeah. And back when they deployed, social media was a big no-no.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Because you could tell where they were, huh?
OPSEC.
Yeah.
We had to continually remind the families not to post anything about where your soldier might be, when they're traveling, anything like that. And then in the other end of it, we also had to remind the soldiers
To not do that.
of the same thing. OPSEC is a very big issue. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, we had some very sad things that happened. Unfortunately, it was suicides and different things like that we had to help families through, and the soldiers, because we also had same thing on the family side, where it may not, a family member may have committed suicide. But then we also had good things. I mean, we were able to help them, provide them with all their benefits. When they come home, we could point them in the right directions. We used to have a big commissary sale on the floor of the armory twice a year, and everybody loved that because they brought out their best deals. They're from the grocery out at the base in Lemoore.
Oh, okay.
So they got some really, really good deals
On
when they came to
groceries.
my commissary sales.
That's good.
So there were a lot of good, and we used to hold events for them, things like that. But I'm kind of curious with these new cutbacks in federal programs.
Oh, from
If-
the administration.
Yeah, if they're going to cut some of that out. I hope not, but I'm afraid they might be.
I know definitely there's some worries about the administration cutbacks on my part as well with the Head Start program, especially since my mom works in the Head Start program. They're not sure what's going to happen with the program and if it will leave my mom out of a job.
I know. And I have a daughter-in-law who is an aide. Well, actually, she's considered a tutor for a special ed class at the high school. I'm, praying that they're not affected, in any way. But right now, everything is a total unknown in the world right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary.
Was there anything you wanted to add more to that topic of conversation?
On the military side, no. I mean, I would not discourage anyone from going in the military. You know, and I really wish that my children had gone in the military. There are so many benefits, and the young ones just don't think about, especially healthcare these days.
Yeah.
If they do their 20 years, when they get to retirement age, they get military health benefits.
Okay.
But they have to do their time. You got some of these young ones, they'll get out at 10 years, 11 years. I mean, they're already over that hump.
Yeah.
Just stay. Nobody realizes how much health care costs when you get to be that age. So we're very blessed that we have not only our Medicare, but we also have our military side benefits.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
That's good. All right. So another point of topic I wanted to go over is, how is the world different versus now when you were like a child?
When I was a kid, I won't start with walking through the snow to get to school. Those are old. No, I'm kidding. When I was a kid on Halloween,
Yeah.
we went trick-or-treating throughout the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
I walked to school,
Okay.
you know, and I lived like Cedar and Shields area.
Oh, so you're in like Fresno instead of Kerman.
No, I grew up as a kid in Fresno.
Oh. I thought it was in Kerman the entire time.
No, I went there when I was 15.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up walking to school, walking to my elementary school, walking to my junior high. I volunteered in junior high at the VA hospital as a candy striper. And so the world is totally different from when I was a kid. We could walk to the store.
Yeah. It's definitely different than it is right now.
Totally different. It's unfortunately, you know, I wish we had more security, that feeling that we had when I was a kid where you felt like you could let your kids go out.
Yeah.
But you just can't do it.
No.
Not now. I wish you guys had that experience.
I mean, like, I feel like I had that experience when I was like younger, and like when we went to Mexico, because my grandma lived in like in a house, and that house was connected to a store that was someone else's house. The house was like on top, and then like it's kind of like the apartments behind CMAC, where like the storefront is like at the bottom. So we could just go to the store really quick, and like all my aunts and uncles were outside, so they had a visual field of where we were.
Right.
I would say like, however, in the night it was like completely different, because sometimes there would be like individuals who were intoxicated hanging out by the storefront in the night. Like we went to go get bread at like 11 p.m. because my little cousin was just like, I want hot chocolate, and we're like, okay, cool. So yeah.
Well, I mean, and in Kerman, which where we live, although, you know, I live in the country.
Yeah.
And so my kids grew up in the country, so they weren't in town able to just walk around.
Yeah.
They probably could have to some degree when they were like junior high, but that's changed also.
It's a long walk too.
Well, I mean, if we had lived in town, not where we bought, you know, but even now in our small town, it's very sad to see, and it's growing so much, but it's very sad to see that we have homeless in our area too. And that just, you know, it's hard to see.
Yeah, because I remember growing up around that area, I didn't see them as often as I am seeing them now.
Yeah, I mean, when you're driving down the street, driving down Madera Avenue, and you see somebody sleeping on the sidewalk in front of Rite Aid. I actually had the Kerman PD officer go back and check on that person, just because you couldn't tell. But it just makes me sad that a lot of people talk about homeless veterans a lot. There are so many programs out there for them. The issue is the same with some of the, the non-veterans that are out there. They don't want to follow the rules of the organizations that are there to help them. So, a lot of PTSD, coming back, which I know, a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
And it just, it affects them for life. So sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it. All you can do is offer services.
Yeah. My dad, like when he was still working as a farm worker in the fields, had like this friend who was a veteran that was from the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And one time when like they were taking like a lunch break, the individual was taking like a small nap, and he woke up screaming, and my dad had to like shake him, which I don't think that was the right technique to do it, but like my dad also doesn't know how to deal with.
Well, when they come back, for example, I had a transportation unit, 1072nd here in Fresno. When they came back from Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
we had a big homecoming. I was in the restroom, and some of the female soldiers were in the restroom, and you can hear them talking. They were so scared because over there, they don't stop.
But
If you're in the truck and you're rolling and you're going to, wherever the other guys might be up towards any areas of fightings, for example, Iraq, you don't stop. If you stop, you might die. And that was a reality. So they were worried about coming home and driving. Were they going to stop at a stoplight or a stop sign?
Wow.
Because of the fears that they had over there, and how they had to handle things. So it affects them all, to some degree. But I have a nephew, Christopher, who did 3 tours in Fallujah during the hardest of the fighting that our guys were involved with, and he was a Marine. But I am very happy to say that I do watch him closely when he comes back to California to visit.
Yeah.
And I have not seen any signs of anything. He still seems like our same Christopher. So I do have a habit of paying a lot of attention.
Yeah. Oh, was Christopher Annette's kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, when he was in Fallujah,
Mm-hmm.
and they lived in Selma, and somebody started a false rumor. She was in church, and all of a sudden, they were talking about Christopher from the pulpit, like he had died.
Who started that false rumor?
Somebody in Selma.
You guys never figured out who it was?
No. But can you imagine being a mother sitting in church
Yeah.
and you're hearing this announcement? Oh no, that was honestly a horrible time. We had to go through different channels to
Get a hold of him.
to make sure that he was okay.
Oh wow.
So that was a scary issue. But no, he ended up coming home safe,
Okay, that's
and
good.
we're very proud of him.
I can't imagine Annette's emotions throughout that entire.
It was, just yeah. And because of what I did, in dealing with the military, she came, to me to help, get this figured out, get messages overseas to find out, what his status was. So Christopher was okay, but sadly a lot of guys weren't. And I actually have had, I don't know if you would call it an honor, to some degree it is an honor to be with the family when the body of their soldier is being brought back to the airport. That is it's very hard But I've been through a few of those, you know, and I've had to, unfortunately, we had one family that lost their soldier. And then we were called upon as family assistants to come and help with their officer that was appointed to help them through the process.
Yeah.
This person, and it was a female, but with this person, had us bring in out of her vehicle his Foot Locker and stuff.
As what?
Foot Locker that they would keep their gear in.
Oh, okay.
You know, so like returning his personal effects, you know, things that he had with him over there. And the sad thing was, it was like they lost him all over again. You know, like it hit them all over again because, you know, he had, he lost his life maybe 3-4 weeks or so prior to this part. And that was difficult, you know, to have to do that, to bring that in and, you know, them to open it. And it was like it all became brand new again, I guess, to them.
Yeah, like the trauma, like reopened, like the event of like them bringing the Foot Locker reopened that one that they had.
Yeah, you know, they were, you know, dealing with it emotionally, mentally, and then you bring in, you know, his uniforms and any personal items he may have had in the box. So that's hard. I've had soldiers that have lost children while they were gone. So we've been there. So sometimes a very, very difficult job, but a very rewarding job.
Yeah.
A lot of stress. I used to be on call 24 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
You can ask any of my children. I always had a phone with me. It could go off in the middle of the night. I would get calls from guys overseas asking me to check on their spouse. And I'd say, do you know what time it is here? You know, because hours were so...
Yeah.
So it was hard on the kids. That part was hard on the kids. There was like never any just family time without that phone, you know, being there. Even if you were in a movie theater and you had it on silent, then you would have to walk out and take the call. So, but we're a very proud military family.
Okay. Wasn't your dad in the military too?
My dad wasn't, but my grandfather was.
Oh, okay.
Have a nephew who is an officer in the Army, Bradley. I have a cousin whose son is a major in the Army. I've had cousins, you know, retire out of the Air Force. We're a very big military family. So I don't discourage anybody from going in the military.
Okay.
Even women.
Oh. Sorry, side note. Jerry told me that you were worried and you told him no.
Huh?
I said Jerry told me that you were worried about him and told him no, that he couldn't join.
I love Jerry. Emotionally, I don't know that he would have been up for the task.
Yeah.
It would have been great for Catherine.
Wait, for the military? For
Oh, I
Catherine?
would have loved to have seen Catherine go in the military because she would have learned some discipline. It would have been great for her. But she works at the VA hospital and she's working with veterans, and that she loves doing that because of, you know, growing up at the armory and with her dad.
Yeah. I'm glad that she loves doing that job. 'Cause I know
She does.
Lately it's been a little hard.
Everything dealing with the military or veterans can be stressful.
Yeah. For sure. What about dealing with your husband? Sorry.
Huh?
What about dealing with like that aspect of your husband?
That aspect of my husband? Are you talking about his military time and
Maybe, like-
and these days, or
Well, like when he came back, like did he also have PTSD?
no?
Okay.
But like he had told me, he said, "I don't care what you do in the house, just don't touch the garage." Jerry's very, very easygoing, you know. But he came home and opened up the garage and found that I had pushed like the old couch and stuff out there. You know, and that was just like the one area he didn't want me putting the stuff. So no, we dealt with it, except it was hard on the kids, you know, him being gone. But we had a lot of communication, so
Okay,
we made it through.
that's good. How long have you known your husband?
I met my husband when I was 15 at the Portuguese Hall in Kerman. Then we started dating when 2 weeks before I turned 16, because that was my father's rule. No dating till you're 16, but he gave in to Jerry. So we dated for a long time, then we broke up. He graduated, went in the Army. I got into a bad marriage. And then when we ran into each other again, he had come back from Germany. And it was just like we'd never been apart, even though we'd both been through, you know, bad marriages and divorce. But,
Yeah.
you know, he was my one.
That's cute. Very sweet. So what was the exception that your dad that you could date him early?
I don't know. Maybe because he had the guts to come to the house and ask.
Oh,
Although he had long hair at the time.
really? Why? I did not know that. I've always seen him with short hair.
You've always seen him with military hair and, you know,
Like a
just a
buzz
little bit
cut.
longer, yeah.
How long was
no.
his hair?
Do you remember that 70s show? Did you ever see any of the old episodes? There was a character named Kelso.
Was it the one that like there's an actress like Megan like who? No,
They got married.
no. Was it like when like Demi Lovato dated like, or was that the French show?
No, that wasn't it. Anyway, Kelso was the guy with the long hair on that show.
can't-
You're gonna have to look it up.
Is there a picture? Like, do you have pictures of him from like back then?
Yeah. And if you look up that 70s show and you see Kelso, you'll see your future father-in-law.
Hold on, chat. Let me look this up. I don't know who his picture is.
Ashton Kutcher.
That's it, Ashton Kutcher. Yep.
Okay. Wait, I know who that dude is. That's the dude who housed with like the human trafficking resources, right?
Yeah.
Wait, was it like this?
No, longer. That'd be a little bit longer. It was from when he was in that 70s show, but close. You know, he had,
Okay.
Point your phone at that camera.
Like looking at.
he had the longer hair and the puka shells, and back then, you know, guys used to cut off their Levi's just below the pocket, the short shorts.
No, I didn't know. So my dad always had like this bowl cut, I would want to say, and then like now he just cuts it. So it was really different because I grew up with my dad having a bowl cut, but my little sisters didn't. And so seeing pictures of him having that, they're like, whoa. But like I never knew that.
Yeah.
He doesn't. To me, he doesn't seem like the type who would just like want like long hair.
Oh yeah, he had the long hair, and like I said, you know, he had the little puka shells and necklace that was big back then, and oh yeah.
I don't know. I didn't expect him to go into trends.
Yeah, back then. But then when the military comes, you get a number 2. They just shave your head with a number 2. So he was used to that for, God,
So many years.
so many years. And then when he retired out, he started letting it grow out some, but never like it was when he was young.
Okay. Do you miss like that haircut on him when he was like young, or like did you not like it?
Oh no, it was cute.
Would you want to see him again like that?
As an older Kelso. He doesn't quite look like Ashton Kutcher anymore. I don't know. It's nice when he has a little bit of hair on his head, but not too long ago he did it again, you know,
Shaped it.
buzzed it off, and it's just starting to, you know, grow out again, so he hasn't gone and gotten it cut recently. Not till it's a little bit long enough to.
Yeah. I thought like he waited because during the winter it got cold.
Now, I don't know why he did it.
Okay. That's great. I never knew that. It's interesting. I want to see those photos. Because I know Jerry has asked me like, oh, what if I grow up my hair really long? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't listen to Mom anyway, though, so.
Okay. All right. I think that's about all the time we have for today. My name is Jazz. This is Sue. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. We really appreciate you listening to our stories and listening to what we have to share. And as always, share your stories. We're always here to help share your stories. Thank you.